There is a ghost in the radio spectrum. It does not speak. It does not negotiate. It simply exists, occupying a specific coordinate in the invisible ocean of airwaves that surrounds our planet. For over 50 years, while governments fell, walls crumbled, and the internet was born, this signal remained constant. It is a rhythmic, mechanical pulsar buzzer repeating 25 times every minute, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It has never officially signed off. The frequency is 4,625 kilohertz. To the casual listener, it sounds like a malfunction, a glitch in the system. But to intelligence agencies, cryptographers, and amateur radio enthusiasts, it is the most terrifying sound on Earth. It is known as UVB-76, and the leading theory is not that it is a communication device, but a trigger, a dead hand switch designed to detect silence. If the buzzing stops, the missiles fly. The file on this frequency was stamped, never open. Yet we begin tonight by tuning in to the sound of the end of the world. Let us retreat into the archive. Imagine you are standing in a climate-controlled vault, deep underground. The air here is cool and smells of ozone and old paper. The lighting is dimmer soft, clinical blue that barely illuminates the rows of steel filing cabinets stretching into the darkness. Here, the noise of the modern world cannot reach us. There are no notifications, no headlines, no urgency. There is only the data dot. We are pulling a file from the year 1973. It is a heavy folder, bound in gray cardstock, the Cyrillic text on the cover faded by time. As we open it, we are looking for the origin of a sound that has become the heartbeat of the Cold War's ghost. To understand the frequency, we must first understand the silence that it breaks. Settle in. Let your focus narrow down to the facts. We are examining the phenomenon of shortwave radio propagation, a technology that seems archaic today, yet remains the only way to communicate across the globe without satellites or underwater cables. In the early 1970s, radio operators scanning the lower end of the shortwave band began to notice a new intruder. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't the melodic tapping of Morse code. It was a rough, abrasive noise, a buzz. It sounded like a foghorn blowing through a broken synthesizer. It was broadcast on 4,625 kilohertz. This specific frequency is significant. In the physics of radio, 4,625 kilohertz sits in a unique position. It is low enough to bounce off the ionosphere, the layer of charged particles in our upper atmosphere, and return to Earth, skipping over the horizon like a stone across a pond. This is called skywave propagation. It means that a signal generated in the swamplands of Russia can be heard clearly in London, in Tokyo, and in the dead of night, even in the United States. The signal was relentless. It did not follow a schedule. Most radio stations sign off. They have broadcast hours. They have maintenance breaks. UVB-76 did not. From the moment it was identified, it was always there. Imagine the psychological effect of this. It is 1975. The Cold War is freezing over. You are a radio operator in a listening post in West Germany. You have headphones pressed tight against your ears, scanning the static for enemy movement. And then you find it. That monotonous drone. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Approximately 21 to 34 times per minute, each tone lasting exactly 1.2 seconds. The precision was mechanical, but the texture of the sound was analog. It wasn't a clean digital beep. It was dirty. It hummed with the electricity of the Soviet grid. Intelligence analysts began to log the signal. They gave it the nickname the buzzer. In Russian, it is often referred to as gush. At first it was dismissed as interference, perhaps a jamming signal, designed to block Western propaganda from entering the Iron Curtain. But jamming signals are chaotic. They are loud white noise designed to overwhelm. The buzzer was different. It was distinct. It was a channel marker. It was holding the line open. Why would a superpower spend millions of rubles and, later, millions of dollars to power a massive transmitter, day and night, for decades, just to broadcast a noise that conveys no information? This is the central paradox that keeps the archive awake. If you analyze the signal on a spectrogram, a visual representation of sound frequencies, it appears as a solid, flat bar, a wall of noise. But if you listen closely, if you strip away the static and the atmospheric distortion, you realize that the buzzer is not generated by a computer. But for many years, the archive suggests a far stranger reality. The sound was not a digital file on a loop. It was a live microphone. Let that sink in. The prevailing theory among audiophiles and defectors is that somewhere, in a concrete bunker hidden within the vast forests near 40 kilometers northwest of Moscow, there was a device placed in front of a live microphone. This device generated the tone. The microphone captured it, along with all the background noise of the room, and sent it up the antenna, into the sky, and out to the world. This means that for 50 years, the world has been listening to a live feed of an empty room. We know this because occasionally, the ghost in the machine makes a mistake. There have been moments, rare, terrifying anomalies recorded in the logs where the buzzer malfunctioned. It stuttered, it paused, and in those fractions of a second of silence, we heard the room. On one occasion, recorded in the early 2000s, the buzzing stopped, and listeners heard the faint, muffled sound of a door opening. Footsteps. heavy boots on a concrete floor, a voice, speaking in Russian, too distant to decipher, and then the buzzing resumed. It is a chilling intimacy, to be sitting in a comfortable home in a western city, safe and warm, and to tune a radio receiver to 4,625 kilohertz, realizing that you are listening, in real time, to a cold, damped military bunker thousands of miles away. You are listening to the air inside a restricted zone. The archive notes that the purpose of a channel marker is simple. It tells the receiver that the system is active. It is a heartbeat. As long as the heart beats, the body is alive. In military doctrine, this is crucial. If you are a submarine commander deep in the Arctic or a missile silo operator in Siberia, you do not need orders every second. You just need to know that command still exists. As long as you hear the buzz, you know that Moscow is still there. You know that the chain of command is intact. You know that the war has not started, but the implications of this are dark. If the buzz is a sign of life, then silence is a sign of death. We must consider the engineering required to maintain this. The transmitter power is estimated to be around 10 kilowatts. This is not a massive commercial station power, which might run at 50 or 100 kilowatts, but it is significant. It requires a constant fuel source, constant maintenance, and constant security. The antenna arrays for such a frequency are large dipoles stretched between tall masts, visible in satellite imagery, cutting geometric shapes against the chaos of the forest. In the 1980s, as the Soviet Union began to crumble, the buzzer did not waver. When the Berlin Wall fell, the buzzer continued. When the Soviet flag was lowered over the Kremlin for the last time on December 25, 1991, and the Russian Federation was born, the buzzer did not pause for a single second. Regimes changed, ideologies died, borders were redrawn, but the frequency remained. It is a constant in a variable world. It represents a level of institutional inertia that is almost impossible to comprehend. It suggests that deep within the military apparatus, there are protocols that supersede politics. There are machines that were turned on 50 years ago and have simply never been told to stop. But the story of the frequency that never sleeps is not just about the machine. It is about the listeners. There is a community of people who sleep with this sound. They leave their radios on, volume low, the rhythmic buzz, buzz, buzz acting as a strange, dystopian lullaby. They are the watchers. They are the ones who document the anomalies. They are waiting for the moment the pattern breaks, and the pattern does break. Although the buzzer is the primary resident of 4,625 kilohertz, it is not the only sound. Very rarely, the buzzer will cut out completely. The silence that follows is heavy. It is a vacuum. And then, a human voice breaks through. This is where the archive turns from technical to tactical. These voice messages are rare. They usually happen only a few times a year. A live operator, usually a male voice, sometimes female, will come on the air. The voice is distorted, metallic, sounding like it is coming through a telephone line from the 1940s. They speak in code. UVB 76, the voice used to say. Then, a string of names and numbers, 18008 Bromel 7, 4279914. These are known as monoliths, encrypted orders. To the uninitiated, they are nonsense, random words like Bromel or terracotta or farming. But to the sleeper agents or the military units receiving them, they are instructions. The juxtaposition is jarring. You have hours, days, months of mind-numbing robotic buzzing. And then, suddenly, a human element, a reminder that there are people behind the curtain, a reminder that the system is being watched and used. The voice messages confirm that this is not just an automated relic. It is an active military network. The fact that it is still using analog voice transmission in an age of digital encryption and satellite uplinks is a mystery in itself. Why use a technology that anyone with a $20 radio can intercept? The answer lies in survivability. There are lines on the map that you cannot cross without a passport, and there are lines in the air that you cannot touch without clearance. The radio spectrum is a territory, divided and policed just like the land beneath our feet. There are bands for music, bands for aviation, bands for emergency services, and then there are the dead zones, the gray areas, the frequencies that do not appear on consumer devices. 465 kilohertz is one such coordinate. It is a digital no man's. To broadcast here is a federal crime in almost every nation on Earth. It is reserved for the specters of the state. Yet, if you have the right equipment, and you tune your receiver to this forbidden number, you will find that it is not empty. It is occupied by a signal that defies international law and ignores the passage of time. It is a broadcast that has no DJ, no commercials, and no end. It is the sound of a secret being kept in replay. The file was stamped never open, yet we begin tonight by tuning into the forbidden broadcast. Let the static settle. Imagine you are seated in a room with soundproof walls. The air is cool, conditioned to preserve the fragile magnetic tape stored in the archives around you. The light is low, casting long, soft shadows across the floor. You are safe here. The chaotic noise of the outside world has been filtered out. There is only the steady hum of the equipment and the faint smell of ozone and old paper. We are turning our attention to the dial. In the world of radio, every frequency tells a story. But 4625 kHz is a story written in invisible ink. It sits in the lower part of the high-frequency band, often abbreviated as HF. This is a unique neighborhood of the electromagnetic spectrum. It is not like the FM radio in your car, which relies on line-of-sight meaning. The signal can only travel as far as the horizon. No, the HF band is different. It is powerful. It is atmospheric. To understand why this broadcast is forbidden, we must first understand how it moves. It does not travel through the ground. It travels through the sky. Visualize the planet Earth, hanging in the darkness of space. Surrounding our world, roughly 60 to 600 miles above the surface, is a layer of energized particles called the ionosphere. It is created by the radiation of the sun hitting our atmosphere. It is a natural invisible mirror floating in the sky when a transmitter on the ground fires a signal at 4625 kHz. The wave travels up. It pierces the clouds. It pierces the blue sky. It reaches the ionosphere and it bounces. It reflects back down to Earth, skipping over oceans, over mountain ranges, over borders. This is called skywave propagation. It allows a signal generated in a swamp in Russia to be heard in a basement in New York. It allows a ghost to haunt the entire world simultaneously. This physics is what makes the broadcast so dangerous and so vital. It is hard to trace, it is hard to block, and it is impossible to ignore. For decades, amateur radio operators and radio enthusiasts have monitored this frequency. They are the watchers of the airwaves. They sit in their shacks late at night, illuminated only by the glow of their transceivers, listening to the darkness. They know the rules. They know that 4625 is not for them. It is outside the amateur bands. It is allocated to the military, specifically the Russian military. But the nature of radio is that it leaks. You cannot build a wall around a frequency. If you transmit with enough power, the world will hear you. And for 50 years the world has heard the buzzer. Let us analyze the sound itself. If you were to tune in right now, what would you hear? It is not a pleasant sound. It is not designed for human comfort. It is a harsh, metallic buzz. Some have compared it to a foghorn dragging across a concrete floor. Others say it sounds like a synthesized cello playing a single discordant note. Bzzzt. 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 It repeats approximately 25 times per minute. It is monotonous. It is relentless. But beneath the monotony there is a texture. If you listen closely, with the volume low, you can hear the imperfections. This is the detail that keeps the analysts awake at night. The sound is not perfectly digital. A computer-generated tone would be flawless. It would be the exact same waveform, down to the microsecond, every single time. But the forbidden broadcast varies. Sometimes the pitch wavers slightly. Sometimes the volume dips. Sometimes you can hear faint conversations in the background, ghostly voices echoing in the room where the signal is being generated. This confirms the theory we discussed in the previous file, the live microphone. Imagine the scene. Somewhere in the vast frozen landscape of the Leningrad military district, or perhaps hidden in the dense forests near Moscow, there is a secure facility. Inside that facility, there is a room, and inside that room, a device is buzzing. A microphone hangs above it, capturing the sound and sending it to the massive antennas outside. Why use a live microphone? Why use such an antiquated method for such a sophisticated system? The archive suggests a reason rooted in paranoia. A digital system can be hacked. A computer can be fooled. A pre-recorded loop can be spoofed. But a live analog signal, that is harder to fake. It requires physical presence. It requires electricity. It requires the facility to be intact. The live microphone is a proof of life. It is a constant verification that the bunker has not been destroyed. It captures the ambient noise of the room, the hum of the ventilation, the footsteps of the guards, the shifting of chairs. It broadcasts the atmosphere of the bunker to the entire world. So when you tune to 4625 kHz, you are not just listening to a noise. You are engaging in a form of long-distance surveillance. You are listening to the air inside a top-secret Russian military installation. You are a digital voyeur, peering through a window that was left open by mistake. This is why it is forbidden, not just because of the regulations, but because of what it represents. It is a raw, unfiltered connection to the neural network of a superpower's defense system. The sensation of listening to it is hypnotic. Many people use recordings of UVB-76 as dark ambient background noise for sleeping or studying. There is a strange comfort in its consistency. In a world of chaos, where news cycles change every hour and trends disappear in a day, the buzzer is a constant. It was there before you were born. It will likely be there after you are gone. It is a monument made of sound, but the broadcast is not always consistent. There are anomalies, and it is these anomalies that we must archive in the early days. Before the internet, tracking 4625 kHz was a lonely pursuit. You would write down your observations in a logbook. Time 0300 Zulu. Signal strength, strong. Buzzing continues. But as technology advanced, the listeners connected. They formed a global network of ears. They built automated servers that record the frequency 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They created spectrograms waterfall, displays that visualize the sound as heat maps, and they began to notice patterns. They noticed that the buzzer changes tone before a message. They noticed that the background noise levels shift at certain times of day, perhaps indicating a change of shift for the guards in the bunker. They noticed that sometimes the buzzer stops entirely. The silence on 4,625 kHz is louder than the noise. When the buzzer stops, the chat rooms light up. The forums go active. Carrier is down. They type, "No buzzer." Panic is too strong a word for the archive, but there is a heightened state of alert. Is this it? Is this the moment the system fails? Or is this the precursor to a voice message? We must pause here to consider the psychology of the listener. Why are we drawn to this forbidden frequency? Why do we find it relaxing? Perhaps it is because 4,625 kHz represents a mystery that does not want to be solved. In our modern lives, everything is explained. Everything is searchable. Everything has a Wikipedia page. We are drowning in information. But the buzzer is opaque. It offers no answers. It just is. It allows us to project our own fears and curiosities onto it. Is it a doomsday device? Is it a scientific experiment? Is it simply a legacy system that everyone forgot to turn off? The uncertainty is a blank canvas, and the static is the paint. Let us go deeper into the technical specifications of the broadcast site. The primary transmitter was long believed to be located near Povarovo. This was a site shrouded in rumor. Locals knew not to go near the fence line. There were stories of strange interference on their televisions and radios. The power required to blast a signal across the hemisphere is significant. It ionizes the air around the antennas. In the winter, when the snow falls on the wires, it might hiss and crackle with the escaping energy. We are walking the perimeter now. In our mind's eye, we are approaching the source. The year is 2010. We are standing at the edge of the woods in For decades, this was the home of the ghost. The facility here was known as General Staff Center 143. It was not a palace. It was a functional brutalist collection of concrete buildings hidden behind a screen of trees. From the road, it looked like nothing, a forgotten outpost. But the air here felt heavy. Urban explorers and curious locals who dared to get close reported a sensation of static electricity. The ground itself seemed to vibrate with the power of the transmission. 4,625 kHz is a hungry frequency. It demands energy. And right here, behind these rusted gates, the feed was constant. But something changed in 2010. The archive records a shift. The listeners, the global network of years we spoke of, noticed a degradation in the signal. The buzzer sounded weaker. It sounded tired. And then, the unthinkable happened. The gates opened, not for a missile launch, and not for a military parade. They opened for abandonment. The military units stationed there packed up their equipment. They loaded trucks with classified documents, cipher machines, and weapon crates. And then, they left. They left the bunker. They left the barracks. But this is the detail that freezes the blood. They left the transmitter running. For a brief period, the station at Povarovo was a zombie, a dead facility with a live voice. Explorers who entered the site years later found a time capsule of the Cold War. Imagine walking into those dark, damp corridors. The floor is covered in water and debris. Paint is peeling from the walls in large, green strips. It smells of rot and wet concrete. You walk past empty guard stations. You walk past dormitories where soldiers once slept, dreaming of home while the buzzer hummed in the walls. And finally, you reach the command center. The explorers found logbooks scattered on the floor, books filled with dates, frequencies, and call signs. They found a log from 2005, a log from 1997. The history of the signal was lying in the mud, decomposing. They found the room where the microphone had been. The famous room. It was empty now. Just a concrete box with acoustic tiling on the walls to dampen the echo. The live mic theory was confirmed by the physical space itself. But if the bunker was abandoned, why can we still hear the sound? Because the ghost moved. The signal did not die. It migrated, like a consciousness being uploaded to a new body. UVB-76 transferred its soul to a new location. Triangulation data from amateur radio operators pinpointed the new source. It is no longer in the woods. It is now believed to be broadcasting from a massive communication hub near St. Petersburg, in the Leningrad military district. Specifically, a site near the village of Kara Massive. This move modernized the ghost. The signal became stronger, cleaner. The equipment was upgraded. The rusted antennas of Povarovo were replaced by the towering steel masts of the modern Russian Federation. But the method remained the same. The buzz, the live mic, the occasional voice. Why keep the old format? Why not switch to a digital encrypted stream that no one can hear? The answer lies in the psychology of the forbidden broadcast. It is a show of force. In the world of intelligence, there is a concept called open source intelligence. Sometimes, you want your enemy to know you are there. You want them to hear the gun cocking. 4,625 kHz is the sound of the gun cocking. forever by keeping the signal analog, by keeping it on a frequency that anyone can tune into. The operators are sending a message to the world. We are still watching. We are still ready. It is a deterrent. It is a warning light on the dashboard of global geopolitics. If the light is on, the engine is running. If the light goes out, the engine has failed. Let us drift deeper into the technical mystery. There is a strange beauty in the sidebands of the signal. When a radio station transmits, it doesn't just take up one single point. It spreads out. It has a width. The buzzer is messy. It bleeds into the frequencies around it. If you tune slightly up to 4,626 kHz or down to 4,624 kHz, you can still hear the ghost of the buzz. It occupies space. It defends its territory. In 2013, a European radio pirate attempted to hijack the frequency. This happens occasionally. Hackers, armed with high-power transmitters, try to play music or shout over the buzzer. They try to graffiti the forbidden wall. For a few minutes, the hacker succeeded. A pop song played over the buzz. It was a surreal moment of chaos. The solemn, terrifying doomsday signal was being mocked. But then the Empire struck back. Within minutes, the power of the UVB-76 signal surged. The needle on the signal strength meter slammed to the right. The buzzer became deafeningly loud. The Russian transmitter had simply increased its power, drowning out the intruder like a tidal wave washing away. A sandcastle, the message was clear. Do not touch the dial as we lie here, listening to the story of this signal. We must realize that it is passing through us right now. Radio waves are not stopped by walls. They are not stopped by blankets. At this very moment, the 4,625 kHz wave is washing over your home. It is passing through the roof, through the ceiling, through your body. You cannot feel it. You cannot hear it without a receiver. But it is there. We are swimming in a sea of invisible information. The forbidden broadcast is a reminder that there are layers to reality that we do not see. There are conversations happening above our heads that shape the fate of nations. But in the archive, these terrors are neutralized. They become data. They become stories. The fear of the Cold War has faded into the nostalgia of the analog age. The buzzer is no longer just a threat. It is a relic. It is a grandfather clock ticking in an empty hall. Think about the operators. The young men and women sitting in that bunker near St. Petersburg right now. It is night shift. Their coffee is cold. The monitors are humming. They are listening to the same buzz that their fathers listened to. They are the guardians of the boredom. They are the keepers of the monotonous flame. There is a peace in that monotony, a reliability. In a world where everything is changing, 4,625 kHz does not change. It is a fixed point. The file is closing now. The secrets of Povarovo and Karo Massive are folding back into the darkness. We have inspected the anomaly, and we have found that it is just a machine, doing what it was told to do. 50 years ago, the red light on the radio dial fades. The needle comes to a rest. You are safe. The signal is just a sound. The bunker is far away. The archive is secure. Let the rhythm of the imaginary static wash over you. Let the white noise become a blanket. The frequency never sleeps. So that you can we will leave the receiver on. Volume low, drifting into the static. The channel is open. The night is long, and the archive is watching. In the age of satellites and GPS, there are no secrets left on the surface of the Earth, or so we are told. We believe that every inch of the planet has been mapped, photographed, and catalogued. But there are places that exist in the blind spots of the digital world, places that are blurred out on public maps, places where the geometry of the forest hides the geometry of war. For 40 years, the world heard the ghost signal known as UVB-76, but no one knew exactly where it lived. It was a voice without a face, a scream without a mouth. Intelligence agencies had their suspicions, but the truth was buried under layers of Soviet disinformation and physical camouflage. It wasn't until a group of amateur radio hunters, armed with directional antennas and obsessive curiosity, began to triangulate the source that the fog lifted. The lines on their maps did not cross at a military base, or a missile silo, or a government palace. They crossed in the middle of a dense, mosquito-infested swamp, 40 kilometers northwest of Moscow, a place called Povarovo. The file on this location was erased from public records. Yet we begin tonight by walking into the swamp where the signal was born. Let us descend into the landscape. Imagine the smell of wet earth and pine needles. The air is cold and damp, clinging to your skin. We are in the Moscow Oblast, a region of endless forests and small, quiet villages that seem frozen in time. The year is late 2010. The leaves are turning brown, signaling the approach of the Russian winter. We are following a group of urban explorers. They are not soldiers. They are not spies. They are archivists of the abandoned. They have traveled here because the signal, the heartbeat of the dead hand, has suddenly weakened. They sense that the beast is dying, or moving, and they want to see the cage before it is empty. Povarovo is not a fortress. It does not look like the Pentagon. As you walk through the woods, pushing aside the heavy branches of the birch trees, you might miss it entirely. The facility is designed to be invisible. It begins with a fence. It is a simple chain link barrier, rusted and overgrown with vines. There are signs attached to the metal mesh. but the red paint has peeled away, leaving only the faint outline of a warning: Zapretnaya Zona, forbidden zona beyond the fence. The forest continues, but it changes. The trees are spaced more evenly. There are mounds of earth that look unnatural, geometric. These are bunkers, buried half underground to survive a nuclear blast. And rising above the canopy, like the skeletons of ancient giants, are the antennas. They are dipole arrays, massive copper wires stretched between metal towers. They are silent now, swaying gently in the wind. But for decades, these wires were hot. They pulsed with 10 kilowatts of raw radio frequency energy. If you had touched them while the station was active, the burn would have been instant. The air around them would have tasted metallic. This is the swamp at Povarovo, the physical home of the ghost. The explorers stepped through a hole in the fence. The silence is heavy. It is the silence of a place that was once very loud. They are walking on ground that was patrolled by armed guards and attack dogs for 40 years. Now, the only guard is the rot. They approach the main building. It is a nondescript 2-story concrete structure. It looks like a school or a small hospital, except for the thick steel shutters on the windows. The doors are open. Let us pause here to appreciate the atmosphere of abandonment. There is a specific emotion that comes from standing in a place where history happened after the people have left. It is a feeling of anemoia, nostalgia for a time you never knew. As we enter the building, the light fades. We are forced to rely on flashlights. The beams cut through the dusty air, illuminating a scene of hasty departure. The floor is covered in debris, papers, books, broken glass. It looks as if a hurricane swept through the offices. This is consistent with the scorched earth protocol. When a military unit leaves a sensitive site, they destroy what they can't carry. But at Povarovo something went wrong. They left too much behind. We step over a pile of gas masks, their rubber faces melting into the floor. We walk past a mural on the wall, a painting of a Soviet soldier looking heroic, now covered in mold. The smell is intense stamped paper and rust. We are looking for the nerve center, the transmission room. The explorers navigate the corridors. They find a room filled with rack-mounted equipment, large metal cabinets with analog dials and switches. These are the transmitters, the Molniya Lightning series, massive vacuum tube beasts that generated the signal. They are cold now. The tubes are dark. The copper coils have been stripped by looters, but it is what lies on the floor that captures the imagination. One of the explorers kicks a stack of papers. He bends down and picks up a logbook. The cover is blue cardboard. He opens it. The pages are filled with handwritten Cyrillic script. It is a shift log. Date the 14th of October 2002. Time 0800. Operator VAS. Status nominal. Signal parameter stable. This is the physical proof. For years, listeners in the West wondered if the buzzer was a recording. Here, in the mud of Povarovo, is the handwriting of the man who watched the machine. It humanizes the ghost. It reminds us that behind the terrifying dead hand theory, there were just men, drinking tea, smoking cigarettes, and staring at needles on a dial, waiting for a war that never came. The triangulation was correct. The lines on the map lead here. But the mystery of Povarovo is not just about the radio. It is about the lifestyle of the silence. This facility, known as the center, was a self-contained world. The soldiers who lived here were isolated. They were the monks of the apocalypse. Their job was not to fight, but to maintain the link, to keep the channel open. Imagine the psychological toll. You are 18 years old. You are a conscript in the Russian army. You are sent to a swamp in the middle of nowhere. Your job is to ensure that a buzzing noise never stops. You are told that if it stops, it might trigger a retaliatory strike. You are holding the safety catch of a nuclear weapon. Day after day, night after night. The buzz becomes the soundtrack of your life. It seeps into your dreams. The explorers move deeper. They find the barracks. Iron bed frames rust in rows. A calendar on the wall is stuck on a date in 2008. A half-finished game of chess sits on a table. The pieces knocked over. It feels as though they vanished into thin air. But the most chilling discovery is yet to come. They find a door leading to the basement levels. The stairs are submerged in black water. The swamp is reclaiming the bunker. The lower levels, where the backup generators and the secure archives were kept, are now a tomb of water. What secrets are drowning down there? Rumors among the locals speak of tunnels. Tunnels that connect this facility to other bunkers in the region. Tunnels that are wide enough for trucks. Some say the facility goes down 6 levels deep. The explorers can only see the top layer of the iceberg. As they stand at the edge of the black water, they hear a sound. It is not the wind. It is a rhythmic dripping drip, drip, drip in the silence of the abandoned bunker. The dripping sounds like a metronome. It sounds like a slow version of the buzzer. The facility is still keeping time, even in death. Let's analyze the strategic importance of this location. Why? Triangulation reveals that this spot is perfectly positioned. It is close enough to Moscow to be connected to the general staff, but far enough away to survive a direct hit on the city. It sits on a geological formation that conducts radio waves well. The wet ground of the swamp acts as a perfect ground plane for the antennas, boosting the signal strength. The designers of this system knew exactly what they were doing. They used the Earth itself to amplify their voice. But why did they leave? The archive suggests that the abandonment of Povarovo in 2010 was a tactical retreat, not a surrender. The technology had become obsolete. The massive antennas were too visible, too vulnerable to satellite surveillance. The Russian military moved the operation to a more secure, modern hub, but the way they left the haste, the debris suggests panic, or perhaps indifference. There is a document found in the rubble, a maintenance report from 2009. It complains about the deteriorating conditions. The roof was leaking. The heating system failed in the winter. The soldiers were freezing. The mighty voice of the Soviet Union was coming from a building that was falling apart. It is a powerful metaphor. The signal was strong, but the structure was weak. As the explorers leave the main building, the sun begins to set. The shadows of the birch trees lengthen, stretching across the cracked pavement like prison bars. They walk towards the edge of the site, where a small, separate building stands. This is the doghouse. The kennels, the cages are empty now, doors swinging open. But inside one of the cages, they find a collar, a heavy leather strap with a metal tag. It is a reminder that this place was defended by teeth and claws. The silence here is different. It is the silence of a predator that has left its den. We must understand that for the people who lived in the nearby village of Povarovo, this base was a constant source of fear and rumor. They saw the lights in the woods. They heard the hum of the transformers. They saw the military trucks coming and going at night. They knew better than to ask questions. But now, with the gates open, the local teenagers use the site as a hangout. They spray graffiti on the walls of the command center. UVB-76 was here. One tag reads, a modern meme painted over a Cold War secret. The triangulation of Povarovo solved the where, but it deepened the mystery of the why. Seeing the mundane, rotting reality of the base makes the signal feel even stranger. How could such a primitive, decaying place hold the world hostage with a sound? It speaks to the resilience of analog technology. You can bomb a data center, and the cloud vanishes. But a vacuum tube transmitter in a concrete box, that is hard to kill. You can shoot it, you can flood it, and if you dry it out and plug it in, it will probably still buzz. The swamp protects its own. We press deeper into the carcass of the facility. The air grows colder as we move away from the entrance. We are entering the operational heart of the station. This is where the silence was manufactured. The explorers push open the heavy steel door to the communications room. It screams on its rusted hinges, a sound that echoes through the empty complex. Inside the scene is one of suspended animation. It is here that we find the most tangible evidence of the daily life of the signal. On a rotting wooden desk, pushed against a wall covered in peeling green paint, lies a specific artifact that has become legendary in the archive. It is known as the pink logbook. It is not actually pink. It is a faded red, bleached by the sun coming through the broken shutters. But in the flashlight beam it glows. This book contains the handwriting of the last operators to serve at Povarovo. Before the great silence of 2010. We lean in to read. The ink is blue. Ballpoint. The handwriting is hurried. Functional. September 2nd, generator 2 overheating. Replaced fuse. September 3rd, interference on upper side band. Adjusted gain. These are not the notes of madmen plotting the end of the world. They are the notes of bored technicians trying to keep old machinery running. It creates a strange dissonance in our minds. We expect monsters, but we find mechanics. We expect a doomsday computer, but we find a fuse box. This is the reality of the banality of evil, or in this case, the banality of Armageddon. The infrastructure of the apocalypse is maintained by people who are just waiting for their shift to end. As we look around the room, we see the empty racks where the transmitter stood. The floor is scarred with scrape marks. When they pulled the Molniya transmitters out, they dragged them. It was a violent extraction. The cables hanging from the ceiling look like severed arteries. Thick, black rubber cables that once carried the lifeblood of the station electricity now dangle uselessly. The copper inside them has been stripped by scavengers. This is a recurring theme in the story of Povarovo, the transition from a high-security zone to a scavenger's paradise. After the military left, the locals moved in. They took the scrap metal. They took the wiring. They took the furniture. Slowly, piece by piece, the physical body of UVB-76 was dismantled and sold for parts. The voice of the Soviet Union was melted down and recycled, but they could not take the atmosphere. The explorers noticed something strange about the acoustics of the room. Even though it is empty, it feels loud. The silence presses against your ears. It is a dead room. The walls are lined with acoustic tiles, perforated with thousands of tiny holes. This was designed to absorb sound, to prevent echo from entering the microphone standing in this room. You can almost hear the phantom buzz. It is soaked into the concrete. We move to the window. Outside, the night has fully fallen over the swamp. The fog is thick now, obscuring the tree line. The world outside has vanished. We are alone in the bunker. Let us consider the dead hand theory again. In the context of this specific location, why build a nuclear trigger in a swamp? The answer is conductivity. Radio waves, especially at low frequencies like 4625 kHz, need a good ground. They need the earth to help launch the signal into the sky. Dry sand is bad for this. Rock is bad. But a wet, salty marsh, that is perfect. The swamp acts as a massive mirror, reflecting the energy upwards. The engineers who chose Povarovo 70 years ago were not looking for comfort. They were looking for physics. They accepted the mosquitoes, the flooding, and the cold because the ground itself was an amplifier. This realization adds a layer of grim respect to the site. It was a miserable place to live, but it was a perfect place to broadcast. We are now standing at the precipice of the unknown. The flooded levels. Every explorer knows the rule. Never go into the water. The basements of Povarovo are a time capsule that will never be opened. The water is black, oily, and freezing. But we can speculate what lies beneath the surface. The archive suggests that the backup power system's massive diesel generators the size of locomotives are down there. In the event of a nuclear war, the power grid would fail. The lights would go out. But Povarovo had to keep screaming. So, the generators would kick in. They would burn through thousands of liters of diesel fuel, stored in tanks in the sub-basement. The smoke would vent through the chimneys we saw in the woods. The bunker would vibrate with the roar of the engines. Now those engines are silent, rusting in the dark water. There are also rumors of the secure archive, a room where the one-time pads the codebooks used to encrypt the messages were stored. If they are still down there, they are dissolving into pulp. The secrets of the Cold War are turning into sludge. We step back from the edge. The air in the bunker is stale. It is time to leave the interior. We exit the building and walk out onto the overgrown parade ground. The moon has risen, casting a pale blue light over the facility. The shadows of the antenna towers stretch across the grass like the hands of a clock in the distance. We see the silhouette of the gatehouse. This was the first line of defense. It was here, in 2011, that a group of students found a logbook that contained a terrifying entry. It wasn't about the radio. It was about the perimeter. 0200 hours sensor trip. Sector 4. Nothing visible. 0215 hours sensor trip. Sector 4. Movement confirmed. The log ends there. It is a fragment of a story we will never know. Was it an animal? Was it a spy? Or was it just the paranoia of a young soldier staring into the dark woods for too long? The swamp plays tricks on the mind. The mist moves like smoke. The trees look like men. And the constant, imaginary buzzing sound begins to hallucinate in your ears. As we ascend above the trees, we gain a new perspective. We see the facility for what it really is. A scar on the landscape. Nature is healing the wound. The birch trees are encroaching on the perimeter. Vines are pulling down the fences. In another 50 years, Povarovo will be gone. The concrete will crumble. The metal will rust away, and the swamp will swallow the bunker whole. There is a peace in this realization. Nothing lasts forever, not even the doomsday machines. The signal UVB-76 has already moved on. It has shed this physical shell like a snake shedding its skin. It is now transmitting from a clean, warm, modern facility in St. Petersburg. The ghost has upgraded, but the swamp at Povarovo remains as a monument to the analog age. It is a temple to the fear of the 20th century. We can imagine the thousands of signals that were launched from this spot, invisible waves of energy that traveled up into the ionosphere and spread out across the globe. They carried orders. They carried codes. They carried the heartbeat of a superpower. Those waves are gone now, absorbed by the atmosphere, dissipated into the background radiation of the universe, but the feeling of the place remains. That the archive asks us to consider the concept of strategic silence. For 40 years, this place was loud. Now, its silence is its most defining feature. The urban explorers who visit Povarovo often report a feeling of deep calm. Once they get over the initial creepiness of the abandoned buildings, they find a strange tranquility. The world outside the traffic, the politics, the noise feels very far away. Here, in the Forbidden Zone, time has stopped. You are walking through a museum where the exhibits are not behind glass. You can touch the walls. You can smell the history. You can sit on the roof of the command center and watch the stars wheel overhead, knowing that you are sitting on top of a secret that kept the world on edge for half a century. It is a reminder that the things we fear, the shadowy government plots, the hidden bases, the silent signals are often just mundane realities hidden by distance. The monster in the woods was just a radio station. The ghost was just a transmitter. As we prepare to close this file, we take one last look at the coordinates: 56 degrees north, 37 degrees east. These numbers are etched into the history of the radio spectrum, but now, they are just a location on a map where the trees are growing back. The swamp is quiet. The frogs are singing. The wind is soft. We are leaving Povarovo now. We are walking back through the hole in the fence. We are leaving the ghosts behind. The file is stamped archived. The mystery of the location is solved. You do not need to triangulate the signal anymore. You know where it came from. You know that the source is just a quiet, empty room in the woods. Let that knowledge settle in your mind. There is no threat in the static. There is only history. Imagine you are lying in a safe, warm room. Outside, the rain is falling, just like it falls on the roof of the abandoned bunker. But you are dry. You are comfortable. The buzzing sound has faded into a gentle hum. It is the hum of the universe. Spinning slowly, the lines on the map have faded. The borders have dissolved. There is only the signal of your own breathing. Slow, steady, in and out. The archive chill protects you. The stories are contained. The secrets are sleeping. And now, so are you. The frequency is clear. The channel is closed. There is a nightmare that haunts the architects of modern warfare. It is not the nightmare of invasion, or revolution, or economic collapse. It is the nightmare of silence. It is the fear that an enemy could strike so fast, and so hard, that there would be no one left to pick up the phone. No precedent. No generals. No command structure. In the 1980s, the Soviet Union built a machine to solve this problem. They built a ghost. It is officially known as Systema Perimeter. The West calls it the dead hand. It is the only weapon system in human history designed to operate after its masters are dead. It is an automated doomsday device. It does not require a human to push the button. It only requires the absence of life. If the sensors detect nuclear flashes, seismic shock waves, and crucially the loss of contact with the Kremlin, the machine wakes up. It calculates the logic of the apocalypse, and it launches everything. The file on this system was marked top secret, yet we begin tonight by entering the mind of the machine that holds a gun to the head of the world. Let the tension of that reality fade. We are safely inside the archive now. The thick steel doors have closed behind us, blocking out the chaos of the surface. Here the temperature is regulated. The air is still. The only sound is the quiet, rhythmic hum of the server room, processing history into data. The file we are examining is cold to the touch. The ink is faded, smelling of old classified paper and bureaucratic secrets. We are going to dissect the anatomy of the perimeter system, not to cause fear but to understand the cold, mathematical logic that governs our safety. It is a story of engineering pushed to its absolute, terrifying limit. Imagine the mindset of the Cold War. It is a world of paranoia, a world where two superpowers are staring at each other across the ocean, fingers hovering over buttons. The strategy of the time was called mutually assured destruction, or MAD. It was a simple, brutal contract. If you kill me, I will kill you. But there was a flaw in the contract. What if the attack is a decapitation strike? This was the Soviet fear. They worried that American missiles, launched from submarines in the North Atlantic, could hit Moscow in less than 15 minutes. That is not enough time to evacuate the leadership. It is barely enough time to confirm the attack. If the leadership is wiped out in the first strike, who gives the order to retaliate? If the brain is dead, how does the body fight back? The answer was automation. In the early 1980s, deep within the design bureaus of the USSR, engineers began to draft the blueprints for a system that could function without humans. They called it Perimeter. It was designed to be the ultimate fail-deadly mechanism, a guarantee of revenge. To understand how it works, we must imagine the system as a sleeping giant. It is not a single computer. It is a network. It is a nervous system spread across the largest country on Earth. It begins with the senses. The perimeter system is constantly tasting the environment. It has sensors buried deep in the granite of the Ural Mountains. It has sensors in the frozen tundra of Siberia. It has sensors in the forests near Moscow. What is it looking for? First, it listens for seismic activity. When a nuclear warhead detonates on the ground, it creates a specific type of earthquake. It is not like a natural shift in tectonic plates. It is a sharp, violent shock wave. The perimeter knows the difference. It feels the earth shaking and logs the data. Event detected. Second, it sniffs the air for radiation. Gamma rays, X-rays, the invisible signature of a nuclear event. If the radiation levels in the atmosphere spike suddenly, the sensors confirm the air is burning. The air is burning. Third, it monitors air pressure. The blast wave of an explosion creates a massive overpressure event. It is a wall of air moving faster than sound. The sensors feel the squeeze, but these physical signs are not enough. An earthquake could be natural. A radiation spike could be a reactor accident. The machine needs one final, crucial piece of data before it decides to end the world. It checks for the pulse of the leadership. This is the most chilling aspect of the algorithm. The system attempts to contact the general staff. It pings the command centers. It listens for the encrypted chatter of the military hierarchy. If it hears orders, it goes back to sleep. If it hears humans talking, it knows that someone is still in charge. But if it detects the seismic shock, and the radiation, and the pressure, and then, when it calls out to Moscow, it receives only silence. Then, the logic gate opens. If silence equals true, then retaliation equals true. It is a horrifyingly simple equation. The machine assumes that the silence means everyone is dead. It assumes that it is the last survivor. And so, it executes its final instruction. This process is entirely autonomous. There is no precedent needed to turn a key. There is no general needed to input a code. The machine has the authority. We must pause here to reflect on the psychological weight of this. We have handed the power of extinction to a circuit board. The engineers who built this were not monsters. They were mathematicians. They were trying to solve a game theory problem. They believed that if the Americans knew this machine existed, they knew that striking Moscow would not stop the retaliation, then they would never strike in the first place. The dead hand was built to ensure peace. It was a paradox. You build a machine that kills everyone, so that no one will ever be killed. Let us look deeper into the mechanism of the launch. How does the perimeter actually fire the missiles? It cannot physically press the buttons in every silo across Russia. The silos are separated by thousands of miles. The communication lines might be cut, so the system uses a unique weapon. It uses command rockets. These are not missiles designed to hit New York or London. They are missiles designed to fly over Russia. Imagine the scenario. The system wakes up. It determines that the country has been destroyed. The command bunkers in the Ural Mountains open their silos, but instead of aiming for the enemy, these rockets aim for the stratosphere. They launch, they climb high into the atmosphere, crossing the continent from east to west. As they fly, they act as radio transmitters. They broadcast a signal down to the ground below. It is a master key, a universal unlocked code. Below them, scattered across the vast snowy landscape, are the surviving nuclear silos. The crews inside might be dead, the power might be out, but the computers in the silos are listening. When they hear the signal from the command rocket flying overhead, they wake up. They override all local safety protocols. They accept the target coordinates stored in their memory banks, and they launch. It is a domino effect. One machine wakes up the others. The image is almost poetic in its darkness. A lonely rocket flying over a burning country, singing a song of destruction to the sleeping giants below. The system was fully operational by 1985. Sat silently through the end of the Cold War. It sat silently through the fall of the Berlin Wall. It sat silently while the Soviet Union collapsed and the maps were redrawn. And the most terrifying part, for a long time, the West didn't even know it existed. The Soviets never officially announced it. This contradicts the logic of deterrence. As Dr. Strangelove said in the famous film, the whole point of a doomsday machine is lost if you keep it a secret. But the Soviets kept it secret because they were afraid of their own creation. They were afraid that if the West knew, they might try to hack it, or they might try to trick it. So, it remained a rumor, a ghost story told by intelligence analysts. Have you heard about the dead hand? They would whisper. Have you heard about the machine that listens for the silence? It wasn't until the 1990s, after the Iron Curtain fell, that high-ranking Soviet officials began to talk. They confirmed it. Yes, it was real. Yes, it was active. And yes, it is still active today. Let us delve into the technical specifics of the hardware. The command rocket used in the perimeter system is known as the 15A11. It is based on the UR-100N intercontinental ballistic missile. It is a liquid-fueled beast, capable of sitting in a silo for years, fueled and ready to fly. The radio transmitter in its nose cone is a marvel of hardened electronics. It has to survive the immense vibration of launch. It has to survive the electromagnetic pulse of nuclear explosions nearby. It has to function in the harshest environment imaginable. The signal it broadcasts is encrypted, of course, but it is a powerful, wideband signal. It is designed to punch through electronic fog. In a nuclear war, the atmosphere becomes chaotic. The ionization from explosions blocks normal radio waves. It creates a blackout, but the perimeter engineers designed their signal to cut through this. They used extremely low frequencies and redundant channels. They thought of everything that there is a bunker south of Moscow, known as the main center. It is believed to be the brain of the system. It is a deep underground facility, spherical in shape, suspended on shock absorbers to survive a direct hit. Inside this sphere the central computer sits. It is said that the computer runs on a code, written in the 1980s, Pascal Fortran, ancient languages by modern standards. But in the world of nuclear stability, old is good. Old is simple. Old doesn't crash because of a software update. The hardware is clunky. It uses magnetic tape. It uses vacuum tubes. It is immune to the delicate failures of modern silicon chips. This is the aesthetic of the archive chill. We are looking at technology that is heavy, industrial, and permanent. It is not the sleek Lasan steel technology of the iPhone. It is the technology of concrete and steel. But there is a human component, however small. The system is not always fully autonomous. In peacetime, like right now, as you listen to this, the dead hand is in a dormant state. It is monitoring, but the trigger is safe. It requires a human to switch it to combat mode. The theory is that during a crisis, if tensions rise, if war seems imminent, a high-ranking officer will go deep underground and flip the switch. This activates the autonomy. This gives the machine permission to kill. Once that switch is flipped, the timer starts. If the officer does not reset the timer, or if the sensors detect the end, the machine takes over. It creates a terrifying window of time where humanity has abdicated responsibility. We hand the keys to the algorithm and say, you decide. We must also consider the potential for error. What if there is a massive earthquake? What if a meteor strikes Russia? What if a solar flare disrupts the communications? Could the machine be tricked? The engineers built in safeguards. The system needs multiple confirmations. It needs the seismic shock, and the radiation, and the silence. It is a Bayent gate, not an OR gate, but no system is perfect. In 1983, a Soviet officer named Stanislav Petrov saved the world. He was sitting in a warning center when his computer told him that 5 American missiles were incoming. The sirens wailed. The screen flashed launch. Petrov had orders to report it. If he had reported it, the retaliation would have started. But he hesitated. He looked at the data. He used his human intuition. 5 missiles. He thought, if America was attacking, they would send hundreds. 5 is a mistake. He did not report it. He waited, and he was right. It was a sunlight reflection on the clouds that confused the satellite. Petrov was a human. He had doubt. He had fear. He had hope. The perimeter system has none of these things. If the perimeter had been in charge that day, we would not be here tonight. This is the fundamental horror of the concept. A machine cannot understand context. It cannot understand mercy. It only understands input and output. And yet, here we are. The system remains. We are suspended in the moment of the switch. The gap between man and machine. Let us expand our view to the landscape of the silos, across the vast expanse of the Russian Federation, from the forests of Kozelsk to the steppes of Dombarovsky. The silos wait. They are deep holes in the ground, covered by lids of reinforced concrete weighing hundreds of tons. Inside, the missiles sleep. The SS-18 Satan, the SS-19 Stiletto. These are names given by NATO, names that evoke fear. But to the machine they are just assets. Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3. The silos are autonomous too. They have their own power supplies, their own air filtration. They are designed to function even if the surface of the Earth is turned to glass. When the command rocket flies over, the silo receiver picks up the signal. It checks the cryptographic signature. If it matches, the sequence begins. Hydraulic bolts explode. The massive concrete lid slides open, grinding against the rails. The missile's guidance system spins up, aligning itself with the stars around if the stars are hidden by smoke. This happens in total silence. There are no countdowns broadcast on TV. There are no speeches, just the mechanical choreography of the end. The archive compels us to ask, why does this story fascinate us so much? Why is it a sleep story? Perhaps it is because the perimeter represents the ultimate abstraction of responsibility. In our daily lives, we are burdened with choices. We have to decide what to eat, what to say, where to go. We are constantly managing our own little systems. But the perimeter takes the biggest decision of all, the fate of the species, and removes it from our hands. There is a strange, dark comfort in that, a fatalistic peace. It implies that the machinery of the world is bigger than us. It runs on gears we cannot see, and logic we cannot change. It allows us to let go, to surrender control. The system is also a relic of a specific aesthetic, the Soviet brute. Of the 1980s, we imagine the bunker where the perimeter is housed. We imagine the green phosphor screens, the bakelite telephones, the smell of unfiltered cigarettes and stale coffee. That it is a world that feels analog and tactile. It has a texture. Modern warfare is digital. It is drone strikes piloted from a container in Nevada. It is cyber attacks that shut down power grids. It feels sterile, virtual. But the dead hand is physical. It is heavy. It exists in the ground. In recent years, there has been renewed interest in the system. Russian state media has occasionally mentioned it. They remind the world that the guaranteed retaliation is still in place. They have even upgraded it. The new version is likely integrated with the Yars mobile missile launchers. These are massive trucks carrying ICBMs that roam the forests of Russia. They are hard to find. They are hard to hit. And they are now part of the Dead Hand network, so the ghost has grown legs. It is no longer just in the silos. It is moving through the trees. This brings us to the concept of the empty battlefield. Future wars may not be fought by soldiers. They may be fought by systems interacting with systems. One computer attacks, another defends, a third retaliates. The perimeter was the grandfather of AI warfare. It was the first time we said, if I am not here, the machine will fight for me. But unlike a drone that searches for a tank, the perimeter searches for nothingness. It is a weapon of the void. Let us visualize the deep sleep mode of the system. Right now, the sensors are recording. The seismic needles are drawing straight lines on the paper. The radiation counters are clicking slowly, picking up only the natural background radiation of the cosmos. The system is bored. It waits for an anomaly. It waits for the spike. There is a concept in archival theory called the long now. It is the idea of thinking in centuries, not days. The perimeter thinks in the long now. It was built 40 years ago, but it was built to work 100 years from now. It is patient. The concrete of the bunkers is aging. Water seeps into the cracks. But the core logic remains pristine. Mathematics does not rust. The equation, if silenced, then launches as true today as it was in 1985. We can imagine the technicians who maintain it today. They are likely young men, born after the Soviet Union fell. They wear modern uniforms. They carry smartphones. But when they descend into the sphere, they step back in time. They run diagnostic checks on vacuum tubes made in a country that no longer exists. They polish the lenses of sensors designed to see a war that never happened. They are the caretakers of the sleeping dragon. Do they talk about it? Do they joke about it, or do they work in respectful silence, knowing what sleeps in the racks of servers? The file does not say. The file only lists the technical specifications. Frequency, extremely low frequency ELF. Range global. Response time, immediate. That is a word that carries weight. There is no hesitation. In a human system, there is always delay. A president might freeze. A general might question the order. A soldier might refuse to turn the key. Humanity is the weak link in the chain of destruction. We are burdened by conscience. The perimeter solves the problem of conscience. It replaces it with conductivity. It replaces morality with circuitry. This is why it is the perfect chill story. It is cold. Absolute zero. As we drift deeper into the narrative, consider the irony of the name Dead Hand. It implies a hand reaching out from the grave. But in reality it is a shield. It creates a bubble of fear that protects the nation. Do not touch me, it says, or my ghost will burn you. It is the ultimate defensive posture. The threat of the afterlife. We have ascended. We have left the bunker behind. The air up here is fresh and cold. The snow covers everything in a blanket of white silence. It hides the silos. It hides the senses. It hides the scars of history. From the surface, the world looks peaceful. There is no sign of the machine that waits below. This is the duality of our existence. We live on the surface, in the light, while the systems of our survival operate in the dark. In the deep, we can rest easy knowing that the system is doing its job. It is the ultimate watchman. It never sleeps, so you don't have to worry. The paradox of the Dead Hand is that its existence has likely saved us. By making war impossible to win, it made war impossible to fight. The fear of the machine kept the peace, so, in a strange way, the monster is a guardian. The file is closing now. We are placing the blueprints back into the gray folder. We are tying the string. We are sliding it back into the steel cabinet. The lock clicks shut. You are safe. The logic is sound. The sensors are steady. The seismic lines are flat. Where radiation is normal, the pressure is stable. The machine is dreaming of silence, and so should you. Let the image of the snowy forest fill your mind. Endless trees. Quiet still. The only movement is the falling snow. The only sound is your own breathing. The perimeter is holding the line. The boundary is secure. Drift into the white noise. Drift into the safety of the archive. The anomaly is contained. The Dead Hand is resting. And now, the transmission ends. In the lexicon of war, we are taught to fear the noise. We fear the boom of the cannon, the scream of the jet engine, the siren that wails before the impact. We associate danger with volume. But the most dangerous weapon ever engineered by the human race does not rely on sound. It relies on the absence of it. It is a weapon that treats silence as a command code. In computer science, there is a concept called a watchdog timer. It is a piece of code that demands a constant heartbeat from the system. If the heartbeat stops, if the system goes silent, the watchdog assumes a catastrophic error and resets the machine. The Soviet Union applied this logic to nuclear war. They built a system where the reset button destroys civilization. It is a paradox that chills the blood of every cryptographer who studies it. The signal to attack is not a coded message. The signal to attack is the moment the messages stop. The file was stamped, never open. Yet we begin tonight by listening to the terrifying sound of nothing. We are sealing the vault. The heavy tungsten door rotates and locks into place. The air pressure We are now isolated from the outside world. In the archive, silence is usually a sign of respect or study, but in the file we are opening tonight, silence is the enemy. Let us examine the psychological weight of the negative trigger. Most weapons in human history function on a positive trigger basis. You must do something to make them work. You must pull the string of the bow. You must light the fuse of the cannon. You must turn the key and press the button. Action leads to reaction. It requires a conscious choice, a movement, a decision to destroy. But the Dead Hand system creates a negative trigger. It requires a constant stream of do not destroy signals to keep the missiles in their silos. It requires the leadership to constantly prove that they are alive. If they stop proving it, the weapon defaults to fire. This changes the entire philosophy of existence. It means that peace is not a passive state. Peace is an active effort. Every second that the world does not end is a second where a machine received a keep alive packet. Imagine a man holding a heavy weight over his head. As long as he is strong, as long as he is awake, the weight stays up. But if he falls asleep, if he falters, gravity takes over. The perimeter system is that gravity. It is waiting for the arm of the state to get tired. To understand this mechanism, we must look at the Kazbek command system. This is the nuclear briefcase you see in movies. The Russian president carries it. The defense minister carries it. The chief of general staff carries it. We often think of these briefcases as the things that launch the missiles, and they are. But in the context of the Dead Hand, they serve a different purpose. They are the heartbeat monitors. The central computer of the perimeter, buried deep in the spherical bunker south of Moscow, is constantly pinging these briefcases. It is sending out an electronic query hundreds of times a minute. Are you there? Are you there? Are you there? And the briefcases reply, we are here. We are functioning. Hold fire. This digital handshake is the most important conversation in history. It is a conversation that has been going on, uninterrupted, for 40 years. It happens over encrypted radio channels. It happens over buried fiber optic cables. It happens over satellite uplinks. It is a boring conversation. It is repetitive. It is mundane. But the boredom is the point. The boredom means we are safe. Let's visualize the data stream. Imagine it as a river of green code flowing through the dark cables of the Russian underground. As long as the river flows, the turbines of the apocalypse spin idly in neutral. But what happens when the river dries up? The scenario the Soviet engineers feared was a decapitation strike that was so fast and so complete that it severed all communication lines instantly. A nuclear electromagnetic pulse (EMP) could fry the electronics. A direct hit on the Kremlin could vaporize the leadership. Suddenly, the briefcases stop replying. The central computer sends the query, "Are you there?" Response, null. It tries a backup channel. Status report. Response, null. It listens to the military frequencies. Command post. Acknowledge. Response, static. This is the moment of the trigger. The silence. In a human-controlled system, silence creates hesitation. If a general calls the president and gets no answer, he panics. He waits. He calls again. He wonders if the phone line is down. He wonders if the president is in the bathroom. Human beings look for excuses to not start a nuclear war. We are wired for survival. We assume the best, or at least, we hope for it. But a machine has no hope. It only has protocols. When the perimeter encounters silence, it does not panic. It starts a timer. This is the window of judgment. We do not know exactly how long this timer is. The file is redacted. Some analysts say it is 15 minutes. Others say it is as short as 3 minutes. During this window, the machine enters a heightened state of sensory intake. It stops asking, "Are you there?" and starts asking, "Is the world ending?" It listens to the seismic sensors we discussed in the previous file. It checks the radiation. It cross-references the silence with the violence of the environment. If the silence is accompanied by the shaking of the earth, the logic is complete. The silence is not a mistake. The silence is death. And so, the machine decides to fill the silence with noise. The transition from monitoring to launch is purely mathematical. There is no red phone ringing in an empty room. There is just a change in voltage. A relay closes. A circuit completes. The command rockets ignite. It is terrifying to think that the end of civilization could be caused by a cut wire. What if the silence was an accident? What if a construction crew dug up a fiber optic cable in Moscow? What if a solar flare knocked out the satellites? The system has safeguards against this, of course. It needs the seismic confirmation. But the fear remains. The fear of the false negative. This concept of silence extends beyond the machine. It applies to the operators as well. Deep in the bunkers, the men and women who monitor the perimeter practice radio discipline. They speak in low voices. They use specific codes. They do not chatter. The culture of the bunker is a culture of quiet. You do not make unnecessary noise in a room that is listening for the end of the world. There is a story from 1995. A Norwegian research rocket was launched to study the aurora borealis. It appeared on Russian radar. It looked like a Trident missile launched from a US submarine. The trajectory was heading towards Russia for the first time in history. The nuclear briefcase was opened in front of President Boris Yeltsin. The screen lit up. The generals were shouting. The countdown began, but the dead hand system. It watched. It listened. It did not detect the seismic shock. It did not detect the radiation. And, crucially, it did not detect silence from the Kremlin. The leadership was still talking. The keep alive signal was still flowing, so the machine stayed asleep. It was the noise of the leadership, the frantic shouting of politicians, the panic of the generals that proved the system was still under human control. The chaos saved us. If everyone had gone silent, if everyone had frozen in fear, the outcome might have been different. Let us go deeper into the texture of this signal. What does the keep alive message actually sound like to the machine? It is likely a cryptographic hash, a complex mathematical puzzle that changes every second. The command center sends a puzzle, and the perimeter sends back the answer. This prevents spoofing. An enemy cannot simply broadcast a fake signal to keep the machine asleep because they wouldn't know the code for that specific second. It is a rolling code, a river of encryption that never repeats. This means that somewhere in Russia, there is a server that has been generating random numbers for decades. A random number generator that holds the fate of the world. If that server crashes, does the machine wake up? The archive suggests there is redundancy, multiple servers, multiple paths. The system is designed to assume life until death is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. But let's shift our focus to the philosophical dread of the void. In audio engineering, there is a phenomenon called digital black. It is absolute silence. In analog tape, there is always a hiss. There is always a noise floor. But in digital, silence is a string of zeros. It is a void. The perimeter system is monitoring the noise floor of the Russian military. It expects a certain level of background chaos, the hum of radios, the traffic of data. When a country dies, the noise floor drops. Imagine the sound of a city, Cars, sirens, voices, electricity humming in the wires. It is a roar of life. Now imagine the power goes out. The cars stop. The people vanish. The silence that follows is heavy. It has a weight. The dead hand is calibrated to weigh that silence. There is a chilling parallel here to the dead man's switch used on trains. A train driver must hold down a lever or press a pedal every minute. If he has a heart attack and lets go, the brakes engage. The train stops to save the passengers. The perimeter is the opposite. If the driver lets go, the train accelerates off the cliff, and it takes the rest of the world with it. It is a fail-deadly system, rather than fail-safe. Why would anyone build a fail-deadly system? Because of the logic of deterrence. If the enemy knows that your death triggers their death, they cannot kill you. The silence becomes a shield. We must also consider the duty mode versus combat mode states of the system in peacetime. The silence trigger is likely dampened. The machine is groggy. It checks in, but it is not on a hurt trigger. But during a crisis like the Cuban Missile Crisis, or the tensions of the early 80s, the system is elevated to combat mode. In this state, the machine becomes hypersensitive. It listens harder. The window of judgment shrinks. The tolerance for silence drops. It is like a guard dog that wakes up and growls at the door. It is waiting for the intruder. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. During a crisis, communications are often disrupted. Jamming signals are used. Satellites are blinded. So, at the exact moment when the machine is most likely to fire, the keep alive signal is most likely to be lost due to confusion. This is the fog of war, and the perimeter is a machine trying to see through the fog using only its ears. There is a specific frequency band involved here. VLF, very low frequency. These radio waves can travel through water and rock. They are used to talk to submarines. They are slow, lumbering waves. They can only carry a tiny amount of data. The keep alive signal is not a high-speed video call. It is a slow, rhythmic pulse. I am here. I am here. I am here. It feels primitive. It feels biological, like the beat of a heart in a hibernating animal. As we listen to the archive tape, we can hear the handshake. A series of chirps and whistles. Chirp. Whistle Moscow to Urals. Whistle. Chirp Urals to Moscow. It is a lullaby. As long as a lullaby plays, the missiles sleep. But let us imagine the scenario of the breakdown. Year 2025. A cyber attack hits the command grid. The screens in the bunker go black. The VLF transmitters lose power. The keep alive signal stops in the spherical bunker. The computer notes the time. Status. Signal lost. Timer started. 0 o'clock. The machine waits. 0 minutes, 1 second and 0 milliseconds. 02. It checks the seismic sensors. They are quiet. The earth is still. It checks the radiation sensors. They are normal. The air is clean. This is the anomaly. Silence from the leadership, but peace in the world. This is the ghost scenario. The head is cut off, but the body is unhurt. Does the machine fire? The archive is unclear. Some defectors say yes after a certain amount of time. Total loss of contact is enough to trigger a launch, even without a nuclear explosion. The logic being, if they have silenced the leadership so effectively that we can't even detect the attack, we must assume the attack happened. Others say no, the sensors are the final veto. We prefer to believe the latter. We prefer to believe that the machine needs to see blood before it spills it. But the uncertainty is part of the design. The uncertainty keeps the enemy guessing. Let us step back from the edge. The timer did not reach 0. The signal returned. The handshake was completed. The crisis is a hypothetical one. In the real world, the river of data is still flowing. The servers are humming. The keep alive packet is being sent right now. As you listen to this, there is a comfort in the redundancy. We have built so many ways to talk to each other. Fiber optics, satellites, microwaves, the internet. It is very hard to silence the modern world. We are a noisy species. We are constantly broadcasting our existence, and because we are noisy, we are safe. The perimeter system is listening to us. It hears our radio stations. It hears our television broadcasts. It hears the noise floor of civilization. As long as we are making noise, the machine knows we are here. So, the noise of your life, the traffic outside your window, the hum of your refrigerator, the sound of this video is actually a part of the peace process. Your existence contributes to the signal that keeps the ghosts asleep. We can reframe the dead hand not as a weapon of terror, but as the ultimate listener. It is the most attentive audience in the universe. It waits for us to speak. And now, it is time for you to stop speaking. It is time for you to enter your own period of silence. But unlike the machine, your silence is not a trigger for destruction. Your silence is a trigger for restoration. When you sleep, your body's own keep alive signals slow down. Your heart rate drops. Your breathing deepens. You enter a state of standby. The archive is a safe place to drift. The walls are thick. The secrets are locked away. The file on silence is the trigger is full of tension. But we have read it to the end. We know the ending. The ending is, nothing happened. The missiles stayed in the ground. The rockets did not fly. The silence was just a pause between breaths. Imagine the deep, underground bunker one last time, but do not see it as a scary place. See it as a quiet place, a library of dormant technology. The lights are dim. The computer is humming a low, steady note. It is a lullaby of voltage. It is watching over the silence, so you don't have to let your mind drift into the negative space, the space between thoughts, the space between worries. There is no timer running on your sleep. There is no countdown. You are free to disconnect. You can stop sending the signal. You can let the line go dead for 8 hours. The world will still be here when you wake up. The keep alive signal will be waiting for you in the morning, but for now, let the static take over. Soft, white static. A blanket of sound. The trigger is released. The safety is on. The silence is not empty. It is full of rest. The channel is clear. The archive is closed. Good night. Here is the script foot. Subtitle 6. Project R330. Electronic Warfare. I will generate this in 3 sequential parts to ensure the high word count, approx 3,000 plus words and narrative depth required, without stopping until the story is complete. Status, Part 1, 2, and 3 complete story. Subtitle. Project R330. Electronic Warfare. Tone, technical, cold, atmospheric, hypnotic format. AI voice ready. In the history of combat, the most effective weapon is not the one that destroys the enemy's body, but the one that destroys their ability to see. We call this electronic warfare. It is the art of blinding the opponent. It is the science of filling the air with so much noise that the truth becomes impossible to find. During the darkest years of the Cold War, the Soviet Union developed a system designed to dominate the invisible battlefield. It was not a missile. It was not a tank. It was a ghost machine known as Project R330. The mandate was classified. Create a zone of silence where no enemy radio could function, where no GPS signal could penetrate, and where reality itself could be edited by a transmitter. The West called it jamming. The Soviets called it Radio Elektronia Borba. The file on Project R330 was erased from the public archives. Yet we begin tonight by turning on the jammer and listening to the sound of electronic blindness. The static settles around us like a fog. We are safely inside the archive, shielded by layers of lead and concrete. Here, the airwaves are clean. But out there, in the world of conflict, the spectrum is a war zone tonight. We are pulling a technical file from the dusty shelves of the 1980s. It is a file about the invisible walls built by the Soviet military. Walls made not of brick or iron but of energy. To understand Project R330, we must first understand the philosophy of denial. In the modern age, an army is only as strong as its communication. A pilot needs to talk to the tower. A tank commander needs to talk to his squad. A missile needs to talk to a satellite. If you can cut those invisible wires, the army becomes a paralyzed giant. It has eyes, but it cannot see. It has ears, but it cannot hear. Project R330 was the scissors designed to cut those wires. Imagine a heavy 6-wheeled Ural truck trundling through the mud of an Eastern European forest. It looks unremarkable, except for the strange, geometric array of antennas on its roof. It parks in a clearing. The soldiers inside deploy the stabilizers. They raise the mast. And then, they turn it on. Instantly, a bubble of chaos expands for 30 kilometers in every direction. Inside that bubble, radios stop working. Screens turn to snow. Radar scopes are filled with false targets. It is a weapon of confusion. The specific variant we are examining is the R330. Gittel means resident or inhabitant. It is a strange name for a weapon. It implies that the machine lives in the frequency. It occupies the airwaves so fully that there is no room for anyone else. The sensation of being jammed is described by operators as claustrophobic. You are wearing a headset, listening for your commander's voice. Suddenly, a noise floods your ears. It isn't just static. It is a harsh, rhythmic interference. A mechanical scream. You change the frequency. The scream follows you. You change again. It is still there. The machine is hunting your radio. This is a terrifying innovation of the R330 system. It was not just a loudspeaker shouting noise. It was smart. It was an automated hunter-killer of signals. The system would scan the spectrum, looking for enemy transmissions. When it found one, say, a NATO pilot talking to a ground controller, it would lock on. It would calculate the exact frequency, and then it would blast a focused beam of energy at that specific point. It is the equivalent of shining a flashlight directly into someone's eyes while they are trying to read a book. But the archive reveals a deeper layer to this technology. It wasn't just about noise. It was about deception. The R330 could engage in spoofing. Imagine you are a GPS receiver. You look up at the sky, listening for the satellites. You hear them. They tell you that you are at coordinates 50 degrees north, 30 degrees east. But what if the satellites you are hearing are not satellites? What if they are the R330 truck, broadcasting a fake signal that mimics the GPS code perfectly? Suddenly, your map drifts. Your navigation system tells you that you are 10 miles away from where you actually are. A missile aimed at a bridge hits a field. A drone tries to land on a runway that doesn't exist. This is the hallucination mode of electronic warfare. The machine does not just blind you, it lies to you. In the calm silence of our archive, It is fascinating to think about the sheer amount of mathematics involved in this deception. The waveforms must be perfect. The timing must be precise down to the nanosecond. The Soviet engineers who built this were masters of the electromagnetic spectrum. They viewed the airwaves as a physical territory, just as you would dig a trench to stop a tank. They built walls of interference to stop a signal. The R330 was often deployed in groups, a swarm of jammers. They would surround an area, creating an electronic kill zone. Inside this zone, modern technology reverted to the Stone Age. Digital radios failed. Data links severed. Soldiers had to resort to hand signals and written notes. It forces the enemy to step back in time. Let us visualize the interior of the R-330 station. It is cramped. The walls are lined with green metal boxes. Oscilloscopes flicker with jagged lines. The air is hot, smelling of ozone and overheated capacitors. The operators sit in front of the screens, wearing heavy headphones. They are the silent warriors. They do not fire bullets. They fire electrons. Their war is abstract. They do not see the enemy soldiers. They only see emitters. A blip on a screen. A spike on a graph. To them, the enemy is just a waveform to be flattened. There is a cold detachment in this type of warfare. It is clean. It is sterile. But the effects are devastating. We must also consider the connection between Project R330 and the broader Soviet defense network, including the dead hand system we discussed earlier. The dead hand relies on radio signals to launch its missiles. If an enemy could jam those signals, the retaliation would fail. So, the R330 had a defensive role too. It was designed to protect the keep-alive channels. It could create a tunnel of clear air for friendly signals, while jamming everything else around it. It acted as a shield and a sword simultaneously. The aesthetic of these machines fits perfectly into the archive chill vibe. They are brutalist, functional, and mysterious. They are covered in antennas that look like abstract art sculptures, dipoles, dishes, yoga arrays. They are monuments to the invisible. When you look at a photo of an electronic warfare battalion deployed in the field, it looks like a forest of metal trees has sprouted overnight, a forest that hums with invisible power. The locals living near these testing grounds often reported strange phenomena. Their televisions would go fuzzy. Their radios would pick up strange, rhythmic buzzing sounds, much like UVB-76. Garage doors would open and close by themselves. The air itself felt thick. This brings us to the concept of electrosmog, the idea that we are polluting the spectrum. The R330 was a factory of pollution. It filled the natural quiet of the radio bands with industrial noise. Let us deepen our focus on the texture of the technology. The R330 was a child of the analog age. While modern electronic warfare is did by software and silicon chips, the original Soviet systems were built on vacuum tubes and heavy copper coils. There is a warmth to vacuum tube technology that is absent in modern tech. Tubes are organic. They heat up, they glow, they degrade over time. They have a sound. Audiophiles love vacuum tubes because they add a pleasant distortion to music. But in the R330, the tubes were not used for music. They were used for power. To jam a signal effectively, you need power. You need to shout louder than the other person. The R330 transmitters generated kilowatts of energy. When the system was fully active, the air inside the truck would become electrically charged. The operator's hair might stand on end. The smell of ozone, that sharp, metallic scent you smell during a thunderstorm, would be overpowering. They were sitting inside a lightning bolt. The archive notes that this power came with risks. RF burns, radio frequency burns were a hazard. If you touched an antenna while it was transmitting, the energy would cook the skin instantly, deep into the tissue. The invisible wave has physical consequences. It creates a sense of respect for the machine. It is not a toy. It is a reactor. Let's examine the target list of the R330. What exactly was it trying to kill? In the 1980s, the primary target was voice communication, the tactical radio networks of NATO. The goal was to isolate the frontline units, but as technology evolved, the R330 evolved. In the 1990s and 2000s, the target shifted to cell phones. The version of the R330 is capable of detecting and jamming GSM and LTE signals. It can pinpoint a single mobile phone on a battlefield. This changes the dynamic of privacy. We carry tracking devices in our pockets. We believe that our calls are private. But to an electronic warfare officer, a cell phone is just a beacon. It screams, "I am here." There is a chilling story from a recent conflict where soldiers using dating apps revealed the location of their base. The R330 system detected the cluster of 4G signals in the middle of a forest. It didn't need to crack the encryption of the app. It just needed to see the cluster, the anomaly of data. The electronic warfare system maps the human geography. It sees where people congregate. It sees where the command post is. Simply by counting the number of phones, that turns our connectivity into a liability. This is the modern paradox we mentioned in the cold open. The more connected we are, the more vulnerable we become. If you throw away your radio, you are blind. If you keep your radio, you are a target. The R330 forces a choice. Between silence and death. Let us drift into the sleep mode of the jammer. Electronic warfare is not always about constant noise. Sometimes, it is about listening. This is called ESM, electronic support measures. The R330 spends most of its time in passive mode. It sits silently in the forest, its antennas listening to the chatter of the world. It builds an electronic order of battle. It learns the habits of the enemy. It learns that at 0800 hours, the weather station transmits. It learns that at 0900 hours, the patrol checks in. It builds a pattern of life. This passive phase is deeply hypnotic. It is the machine meditating on the data. Imagine the operator on the night shift. The screen shows a waterfall display, a cascading river of colors representing different frequencies. Most of it is blue silence, but here and there streaks of green and red appear signals. He watches the river flow. He is a fisherman, waiting for a specific fish to swim by. There is a strange intimacy in listening to the enemy. You hear their voices. You hear their boredom. You hear them talking about their families, or the food, or the cold. You know them, but they don't know you. You are the invisible ghost in their headset. And then, when the order comes, you flip the switch. The passive listening turns to active jamming. The river of data turns into a flood of noise. The relationship breaks. The observer becomes the aggressor. We should also touch upon the sound of jamming. What does it actually sound like? It varies. Spark jamming sounds like a chainsaw. Sweep jamming sounds like a sci-fi laser rising and falling in pitch. Noise jamming sounds like a heavy rainstorm. There is a specific type of jamming called voice deception. This is where the R330 records the enemy's voice, splices it, and retransmits it. Imagine hearing your commander's voice giving an order to retreat, when he actually gave the order to advance. This is psychological warfare. It makes you doubt your own ears. It sows paranoia. Is that really him, or is it the machine? The archive chill embraces this paranoia. It suggests that reality is fragile. It suggests that the things we trust, the voices in our phones, the maps on our screens, can be edited by a stranger in a truck. But in the safety of sleep, this paranoia becomes a curiosity. It is a puzzle. We are safe here. The jammer cannot reach us. We are on a frequency that is clear. The R330 is also a story about the arms race of the spectrum. For every jammer there is an anti-jamming radio, frequency hopping. This is a technique where the radio changes frequency 100 times a second. The jammer tries to catch up, but the radio is too fast. It jumps from channel to channel, staying one step ahead of the noise. It is a dance, a waltz between the silencer and the speaker. The R330 responds by jamming the entire band. Barrage jamming. It floods the whole room with water so the fly cannot fly. But this requires immense power. It makes the jamming truck glow on thermal cameras. It becomes a target itself, so the game continues. Hide and seek, cat and mouse. In the invisible ether. As we step out into the cool night air, we leave the heat of the vacuum tubes behind. The forest is quiet. The electronic screaming has stopped. The R330 is in standby mode. The antenna towers stand tall and silent, pointing at the stars. They look like ancient obelisks, worshipping a god of geometry. In the context of the archive chill, Project R330 serves as a reminder of the hidden layers of our world. We walk through a city, and we see buildings and cars, but an electronic warfare specialist walks through the same city and sees a web of signals. They see the Wi-Fi networks overlapping like ripples in a pond. They see the cell towers pulsing like lighthouses. They see the radio waves passing through walls and bodies. They see the invisible architecture of modern life. The R330 was a machine designed to tear that architecture down, but in doing so it revealed how beautiful and complex the structure really is. We take the invisible for granted. We assume the message will be delivered. We assume the map is true. The story of the jammer teaches us to appreciate the signal. Think about the signal-to-noise ratio. This is a concept in engineering, but it is also a concept for life. We want more signal truth, clarity, connection, and less noise distraction, confusion, static. The R330 creates noise. But tonight, we are seeking the signal, and the signal is rest. The battle for the spectrum is over for the day. The soldiers in the truck are asleep. The generator has been powered down to a low hum. The electromagnetic field collapses. The air becomes neutral again. Imagine the radio waves dissipating into the atmosphere. They travel up, through the clouds, into the ionosphere, and eventually, out into deep space. The angry buzz of the jammer becomes just another whisper in the cosmic background. Radiation. There is a peace in distance. From the perspective of the moon, the electronic warfare of Earth is undetectable. It is too small, too weak. The universe is vast and mostly silent. We close the file on Project R2330. We slide the schematics back into the envelope. We turn off the spectrum analyzer. The jagged lines on the screen flatten out. A straight, calm, green line. No data, no threats, just the steady hum of existence. The zone of silence is no longer a weapon. It is a sanctuary. You are in a zone of silence now. The noise of the day has been jammed. The notifications are silenced. The demands of the world are blocked by the heavy walls of the archive. You have frequency hopped away from the stress. You are on a clear channel. Let the static wash over you. Not the harsh static of the jammer, but the soft, white noise of the rain. The white noise of the ocean. It is a blanket of sound that protects you. The ghost machine is powered down. The resident has left the frequency. The airwaves are yours. Drift on the carrier wave. Float on the signal. The connection is stable. The encryption is unbreakable. Goodnight. That is a structure on this planet that is designed to survive the end of the world. It is not a bunker. It is a tomb for the living. In the engineering manuals of the Cold War, it was described as a facility of absolute survivability. It is a place where the laws of physics on the surface, the heat of the sun, the blast of a warhead, the radiation of a fallout zone do not apply. Don't we call it the concrete sarcophagus? Deep within the Ural Mountains, buried under thousands of feet of solid granite, lies the physical brain of the Dead Hand system. It is a spherical capsule, suspended on massive steel shock absorbers, floating inside a hollowed-out mountain. It was built to protect the most dangerous algorithm in history. If the surface of the Earth is turned to glass, this concrete sphere will remain. The file on its construction was stamped never open. Yet we begin tonight by descending into the Earth to touch the walls of the indestructible. We are leaving the surface. The archive elevator is descending. Watch the numbers on the digital display count down. Level 1, Level 10, Level 50. We are passing through the crust of the Earth. The noise of the wind, the rain, and the cities above is fading away. Here there is only the geology. The file we are opening is heavy. It smells of wet cement and rebar. It documents the creation of the ultimate safe house. When we hear the word sarcophagus, we usually think of ancient Egypt. We think of kings buried in gold, waiting for the afterlife. Or we think of Chernobyl, the massive concrete shell built to contain the radiation of a disaster. But in the context of the Dead Hand, the sarcophagus is not a prison for a monster. It is a cradle for a computer. To understand the scale of this obsession, we must look at the geography. We are looking at Mount Kozvinsky, located in the northern Urals. It is a fortress made by nature. The rock here is Dunedin igneous rock that is incredibly hard and dense. It blocks radio waves. It blocks radiation. It blocks sound. The Soviet engineers chose this mountain because it was already a shield. But they needed more. They didn't just want to hide inside the mountain. They wanted to build a ship inside it. The construction began in the late 1970s. It was a project of pharaonic scale, conducted in total secrecy. Thousands of miners and engineers worked to hollow out the core of the mountain. They were not building a series of tunnels. They were building a void, a massive cavern, large enough to hold a city block. And inside this cavern, they built the sphere. Let us visualize the architecture of paranoia. Why a sphere? If you build a square room underground, the corners are weak points. If a shock wave hits a nuclear explosion on the surface that shakes the mountain, like a belt, the stress accumulates in the corners. The room will collapse, but a sphere is perfect. It distributes the pressure evenly across its surface. It is the strongest shape in the universe, so they poured thousands of tons of reinforced concrete into the shape of a giant ball. The walls are meters thick. The steel reinforcement bars are as thick as your arm. But here is the true genius of the design. The sphere does not touch the mountain. It is suspended. Imagine a bowl of concrete hanging in a spiderweb of steel cables and hydraulic dampers. It floats in the center of the cavern. If the mountain moves, if the earth shakes, the sphere gently sways. It is isolated from the trauma of the world. Inside this floating ball is the command center, the main center. This is where the Dead Hand listens. The sensation of being inside the sarcophagus is one of absolute separation. There are no windows. There is no day or night. There is only the artificial light of the fluorescent tubes. Humming at 50 Hz, the air you breathe has been scrubbed, filtered, and recycled. It tastes metallic. It is stale air, but it is safe air. We must appreciate the psychological effect of this environment. To work here is to be a submariner of the earth. You are navigating through rock, not water. The men who built this believed that the surface was doomed. They viewed the sky as a threat. They viewed the open air as a vulnerability. So they retreated into the womb of the planet. They created a space where humanity could survive, even if humanity destroyed itself. There is a strange comfort in this level of fortification. When you are inside the sarcophagus, nothing can hurt you. The anxieties of the modern world cannot penetrate 10,000 feet of granite. The phone cannot ring. The news cannot reach you. You are in a bubble of timelessness. Let's look at the materials. Concrete is a simple mixture: sand, gravel, water, cement. But the concrete used here is special. It is high-performance concrete. It is laced with polymers and steel fibers. It is designed to last for 1,000 years. When we touch the walls of the archive, we are touching a material that was meant to outlive the civilization that poured it. The Soviet Union fell. The borders changed. The currency collapsed. But the concrete of Mount Kozvinsky did not crack. It sits there, in the dark, waiting to the file. Mentions the life support systems. A bunker is only a tomb if it runs out of air. The sarcophagus is designed to breathe. It has massive intakes hidden on the slopes of the mountain, disguised as rock formations. These intakes pull air down into the depths. But before the air reaches the sphere, it passes through a series of blast valves. These are massive steel doors that slam shut in milliseconds if they detect a pressure wave. Imagine the sound of that clang. The mountain holds its breath. Then, the internal oxygen reserves kick in. Tanks of compressed air, chemical oxygen generators, similar to those used on the International Space Station. The sarcophagus becomes a closed loop, a self-contained universe. And what about power? A computer needs electricity. Deep in the sublevels of the sphere, below the command decks, lie the diesel generators. These are not small backup units. These are ship engines, massive 12-cylinder beasts. There are reservoirs of diesel fuel stored in the rock, enough to run the engines for months, maybe years. When the grid goes down, the engines roar to life. The vibration travels through the dampener, the lights flicker for a second and stabilize. The heart of the sarcophagus keeps beating. The aesthetics of this place are defined by brutism. There is no decoration. There is no paint, just raw gray surfaces, heavy steel doors with wheel locks, and conduits running along the ceiling. It is a machine for living, but in the archive chill interpretation, this brutalism is soothing. It is honest. It is sturdy. In a world of fragile glass screens and plastic devices, the sarcophagus represents weight. It represents permanence. It is the anchor of the dead hand system. The radio antennas we discussed in previous files, the ones that broadcast the signal, are vulnerable. They are on the surface. They can be blown down. But the brain is safe. The cables that connect the sphere to the antennas run through hardened tunnels. These tunnels are filled with a special gel to protect the wires from shifting rock. Every contingency was thought of. Every weakness was armored. We are walking the curvature of the sphere. Because the building is a ball, the floors are not perfectly flat. The corridors loop back on themselves. You can walk forever and never find a corner. This design disorients the senses. It creates a feeling of infinity. Let's focus on the acoustics of the deep. In a normal building, sound escapes through the windows. It is absorbed by the furniture. But in the concrete sarcophagus, sound has nowhere to go. It bounces off the hard walls. It is trapped. The result is a very specific auditory environment. A constant low-frequency resonance. If you speak, your voice sounds deeper, more authoritative. The machinery sounds louder. The silence here is not empty silence. It is pressurized silence. It feels heavy on your eardrums, like being underwater. The file describes the command deck. This is the equator of the sphere, the widest point here. Banks of consoles are arranged in concentric circles. The chairs are bolted to the floor. The screens are shielded behind thick glass. This is where the watchers sit. We must imagine the lifestyle of the officers stationed here. They work in shifts. 2 weeks down, 2 weeks up. When they are down, they are residents of the sarcophagus. They sleep in bunk rooms that are carved into the concrete. They eat food from tins that were packed years ago. They exist in a state of suspended reality. There is a psychological phenomenon known as the break-off effect. It was first observed in high-altitude pilots, but it applies to bunker dwellers too. It is a feeling of detachment from the earth. You feel like you are no longer part of the human race. You are an observer, a guardian of the tomb. The concrete walls become your entire world. But the sarcophagus is not just a passive shelter. It is an active shield. The file mentions EMP shielding. A nuclear explosion creates an electromagnetic pulse, a tsunami of electricity that fries circuits. To stop this, the sarcophagus acts as a Faraday cage. The steel rebar inside the concrete is welded together to form a continuous mesh. The entire sphere is wrapped in a skin of copper. It is electrically grounded to the mountain itself. When the EMP hits, the energy flows around the sphere, like water flowing around a stone. It travels harmlessly into the earth. The computers inside do not even blink. This is the concept of the eye of the storm. Outside, the world is burning with invisible fire. Inside, the electrons are calm. The juxtaposition is beautiful in a dark way. The most violent energy imaginable is stopped by a simple cage of metal. Let us touch the door. The main entrance to the sphere is a blast door. It weighs 40 tons. It is not on hinges. It rolls on a track. It is filled with concrete and lead. To close it, you turn a massive wheel that engages steel bolts the size of tree trunks. Click, clack, thud. When that door closes, you are truly alone. There is a story in the archive about a drill. Conducted in 1984, the order came to seal the complex. The doors rolled shut. For 3 days, the crew inside lived as if the war had happened. They watched the screens. They checked the sensors. They waited for the signal. The psychological pressure was immense, but the sarcophagus held them. It provided a structure for their fear. It told them, you are safe. The mission continues. This is the purpose of the architecture. It is not just to protect the body. It is to steady the mind. When you are surrounded by 10 meters of concrete, you feel invincible. You feel like a part of the mountain. The sarcophagus also has a thermal inertia. The temperature deep underground is constant. It is always cool, about 10 degrees Celsius 50 Fahrenheit. Even without heating, the bunker would never freeze. And even if the surface was an inferno, the bunker would barely warm up. It is thermally detached from the seasons. It knows only the temperature of the rock. This coolness is part of the chill. It is a preservation environment. Like a refrigerator for history. The documents inside the sarcophagus, the paper manuals, the logbooks will never yellow, they will never decay. The humidity is controlled. The light is controlled. In 1,000 years, if an archaeologist digs down and opens the sphere, they will find the coffee cup left on the desk exactly as it was. It is a time capsule of the Cold War. We can also look at the water systems. A bunker needs water. The sarcophagus has its own artesian well. A borehole was drilled even deeper into the crust, tapping into an ancient aquifer. The water that comes up is icy cold and crystal clear. It has not seen the sun for millions of years. It is the purest water on Earth. The operators drink this prehistoric water while they wait for the end of the modern world. The irony is palpable. The technology is advanced, but the survival is primal. Cave water, fire, diesel. As we explore the lower levels, the gut of the sphere, we find the waste processing, the air scrubbers, the machinery that keeps the biology alive. It is noisy down here, clanking pistons, hissing valves. But upstairs, in the command deck, it is quiet. The separation of functions is strict. The machine works below so the mind can think above. The sarcophagus is a metaphor for the human skull. The bone protects the brain dreams. And what does the sarcophagus dream of? It dreams of stability. It was built to resist change. The surface world is defined by change. Weather changes, politics change, borders change, but the sarcophagus refuses to change. It is a monument to the status quo. It is a stubborn refusal to be moved. We have returned to the surface view. The mountain stands silent against the starry sky. To a hiker walking on those slopes, there is no sign of the sphere. There is no sign of the world hidden beneath their boots. It is a secret kept by the landscape itself. This is the ultimate camouflage. To be buried is to be forgotten, and to be forgotten is to be safe. As we close this file, we can reframe the concept of the sarcophagus. We usually fear enclosed spaces. We fear being trapped. But tonight, let us view the enclosure as an embrace. Think of the concrete not as a weight but as a blanket. A very heavy, very secure blanket. When you are inside, the chaos of the world cannot reach you. The demands of your life cannot find you. You are unreachable. There is a deep peace in being unreachable. The sarcophagus is the ultimate do not disturb sign. Imagine yourself descending into your own personal bunker tonight. Your bedroom is your sphere. The walls are your shield. You are closing the blast door on the day. Click, clack, thud. The noise of the outside world is cut off. The worries of tomorrow are locked out. You are suspended in the center of the night, floating, safe. The temperature is cool and constant. The air is still. The life support of sleep is kicking in. Your heart rate slows down, matching the rhythm of the deep earth. Your breathing becomes steady, like the ventilation fans. You are entering preservation mode. The concrete sarcophagus of Mount Kosvinsky will stand for 1,000 years. It is not going anywhere. It is holding the weight of the mountain so you don't have to. You can let go of your own defenses now. You don't need to be strong. The mountain is strong for you. The granite is solid. The steel is tempered. The physics are absolute. Nothing can shake the foundation. Let your mind drift down the shaft, down into the quiet dark, past the noise, past the light, into the deep, warm center of the earth. It is quiet here. It is ancient. It is restful. The file is secure. The anomaly is contained. The sarcophagus is sealed. You are safe. Good night. In the timeline of the Cold War, there are dates that everyone remembers. The fall of the Berlin Wall, the Cuban Missile Crisis. But in the timeline of the secret world, the world of signals and shadows, there is one date that stands out as a moment of absolute terror. August 2010. For nearly 4 decades, the ghost station known as UVB-76 had been a constant. It was a heartbeat that never faltered. Wars ended. Presidents changed. Empires collapsed. But the buzzer kept buzzing. It was the one constant variable in a chaotic world. And then, without warning, the impossible happened. The heartbeat stopped. On a humid afternoon in late summer, the frequency of 4,625 kHz went dead. The buzzer cut out. The dead hand system, which was rumored to launch nuclear missiles upon detecting silence, was suddenly staring into the void. For the global community of listeners, this wasn't just a technical glitch. It was a potential apocalypse event. The file on this incident was stamped never open. Yet we begin tonight by revisiting the day the world's most dangerous radio station held its breath. We are stepping back into the archive. The air here is cool and smells of old electronics. We are pulling the logbooks from the summer of 2010. It was a strange summer in Russia. The country was in the grip of a historic heat wave. Peat bogs were burning around Moscow. The city was choked with smog and smoke. The atmosphere was thick, heavy, and oppressive. It was the perfect backdrop for a mystery. To understand the impact of the silence, we must first appreciate the consistency that preceded it. Since the 1970s, the buzzer had been a metronome. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Roughly 25 buzzes per minute. Listeners had grown up with it. They used it to tune their radios. They used it as background noise for studying. It was a reliable, mechanical friend. It was the master switch. But throughout August of 2010, the listeners began to notice changes. The signal, usually strong and abrasive, began to waver. It sounded weak. It sounded like the generator was running out of fuel. The pitch of the buzz shifted, becoming deeper, more erratic. It was like watching an old animal dying, and then it happened. The exact time is debated in the forums, but the effect was universal. The buzzing stopped. Imagine the scene in the listening posts around the world. Amateur radio operators in Poland, in Finland, in the United States, all staring at their equipment. They checked their antennas. They checked their volume knobs. They assumed the fault was on their end. "Is my radio broken?" they asked. But then they went online. They flooded the IRC chat rooms and the forums of the Numbers station community. UVB76 is down. One user posted, "I have no carrier on 4625, said another. Silence confirmed from London. Silence confirmed from Tokyo. The realization rippled across the globe. The channel was open, but the transmission was gone for the first time in 40 years. The frequency was just ... air. We must pause to consider the dead hand theory we discussed earlier. The myth stated that if the signal stopped, the automated counterstrike would begin. There were listeners who genuinely looked out their windows, expecting to see the flash. They waited for the sirens. They waited for the news reports, but the sky remained empty. The world kept turning. So if it wasn't the end of the world, what was it? The silence on 4625 kHz was not a peaceful silence. It was a heavy silence. The carrier wave, the electrical power that carries the sound, was still there intermittently. But the audio modulation, the buzz, itself was gone. It was like someone had forgotten to put the needle on the record. More chillingly, like someone had walked out of the room and left the microphone on. This brings us to the concept of the open mic. During the periods of silence in August 2010, the background noise of the bunker became audible. With the loud buzzing gone, the microphone ramped up its sensitivity, trying to find sound. Listeners heard the ghost in the machine. They heard shuffling. They heard distant, metallic clangs. They heard what sounded like a heavy door dragging across a concrete floor. On August 25th, a moment of terrifying clarity occurred. The silence was broken not by the buzzer but by voices. It was faint, distorted by the atmospheric static of the ionosphere, but it was human. "Vulcan," a voice said. Or perhaps Volga. Then a series of numbers. Then silence again. It was the sound of a facility in chaos. The archive suggests that we were listening to the evacuation of Povarovo. We must visualize the physical reality of the site at that moment. The swamp at Povarovo covered in the smoke of the summer wildfires. The soldiers stationed there were likely exhausted. The equipment was ancient, overheating in the record temperatures. The vacuum tubes inside the transmitters generate immense heat. They require cooling. In the middle of a heat wave, with the air conditioning likely failing, the old Soviet beast finally had a heat stroke. It is a mundane explanation, but it feels profound. The unstoppable doomsday machine was defeated by the weather. But there is a darker theory, the theory of the migration. Military analysts suggest that August 2010 was not a failure, but a planned obsolescence. The Russian military was reorganizing. They were moving their strategic assets. They were taking the soul of UVB76 and moving it to a new body. Imagine the logistics of moving a radio station that is never supposed to stop. You cannot just turn it off, pack it in a truck, and drive it to St. Petersburg. You have to keep it running, so perhaps the silence we heard was the gap between the old transmitter dying and the new transmitter waking up. It was the moment the ghost jumped between shells. The sudden silence created a vacuum of information. And in the world of intelligence, a vacuum is always filled with paranoia. During those days of silence, the listener numbers skyrocketed. People who had never heard of shortwave radio were tuning in via web-based receivers. The mystery went viral before viral was a common term. Everyone wanted to be the first to hear it come back. And come back it did. But it was different. When the buzzer returned fully in September, the tone had changed. The pitch was slightly higher. The rhythm was more precise. The dirt in the sound, the analog warmth of the old Povarovo transmitter was gone. It sounded cleaner, digital, modern. It was like replacing a vinyl record with an MP3. The song was the same, but the soul was missing. This confirmed to many that the location had changed. The swamp era was over. The bunker era had begun. Let us reflect on the emotional impact of this silence. Why did people care? It is because we find comfort in patterns. The buzzer was a constant in a variable world. It was a reminder that the systems of the past were still holding on. When it stopped, it felt like a breach of contract. It felt like the 20th century was finally, officially letting go. For the sleep story listener, this silence is a powerful tool. It represents a pause, a breath. We are often surrounded by the buzz of our own lives, the notifications, the traffic, the thoughts. We are like the station constantly transmitting. The silence of August 2010 teaches us that even the most relentless machines need to stop. Even the systems designed to never sleep eventually blink. If the dead hand can take a break, so can you. Let us linger in the silence of that August. The listeners kept their headphones on, waiting. The static hissed like the ocean. There is a specific type of dread associated with the loss of a signal. It is called signal loss anxiety. It is the feeling you get when a phone call drops mid-sentence, or when the power goes out during a storm. It is the sudden realization of isolation. For 40 years, the West had been listening to Russia, and Russia had been shouting back with a buzz. It was a relationship, a hostile one, perhaps, but a connection nonetheless. When the line went dead, the West was left alone in the dark. We can imagine the intelligence analysts at the NSA or GCHQ. They, too, were staring at their screens. Is this a strategy? They wondered. Are they switching to a stealth mode? The archive suggests that the silence was actually a period of intense human activity, while the radio was silent. The physical world was loud. Trucks were revving. Soldiers were shouting orders. Equipment was being ripped from the walls. The silence was only on the airwaves. On the ground, it was a demolition. This duality is fascinating. A radio silence can mask a physical chaos. In the days following the silence, urban explorers began to inch closer to the Povarovo site. They sensed that the guard was down. The electric fence that had hummed with lethality for decades was now cold. They found the gates open. They found the dogs gone. The silence had a physical form. It looked like empty corridors and scattered papers. It is rare in history that we get to pinpoint the exact moment an era ends. Usually, history fades out slowly. But with UVB-76, we have a timestamp. August 2010 was the boundary line. Before it was a Soviet relic. After it was a Russian mystery. The silence also served to reboot the mythology of the station. Before 2010, it was an obscure curiosity for radio nerds. After 2010, it became a legend. The silence drew attention to the noise. It is a paradox of attention. We notice things most when they are gone. As the signal slowly returned to strength in the autumn of 2010, it began to exhibit new behaviors. The voice messages became more frequent. The monoliths, the code words became more complex. It was as if the system had woken up from a near-death experience with a new sense of purpose. The silence had changed it. Now, let us apply this to the concept of rest. The archive chill is about finding peace in the machinery of history. The story of the sudden silence is a story about the necessity of the void. Even a signal designed to survive nuclear war has a breaking point. It has a limit. You, listening to this, are a biological machine. You have your own frequencies, your own rhythms. You have been buzzing all day, working, thinking, worrying, but you cannot transmit forever. You must have your August 2010. You must have your moment of sudden silence. It is not a failure. It is a migration. You are moving from the day state to the night state. You are moving your consciousness from the active surface to the deep, safe bunker of sleep. Imagine the transmitter of your mind powering down. The heat of the vacuum tubes is cooling. The red lights are turning off. The needle on the dial drops to zero. The static takes over. But this static is not scary. It is the white noise of the universe. It is a cleansing wave. During the silence of 2010, the airwaves were clear. For a brief moment, the spectrum was healed. The scar of the buzzer was gone. Visualize that clarity. A wide, open sky with no interference. Your mind is that sky. The thoughts that usually buzz around your head, the worries, the plans, the regrets are fading out. The signal is getting weaker. Buzz. Buzz. And then silence. The carrier wave is cut. You are now in the gap, the space between signals. This is where the deep sleep lives. In the silence, the archive is closing the file on August 2010. We are placing it back on the shelf. The mystery is preserved. The monitor is dark. The room is quiet. The only sound is your breathing. Slow, steady, rhythm. The buzzer may have returned to the airwaves, but it does not have to return to you tonight. You have the power to stay in the silence. You have the permission to go offline. The system is in standby. The dead hand is sleeping. And so are you. The frequency is closed. Good night. For 30 years, the world listened to a machine. It was a monologue of electricity, a single note played on an infinite loop. We assumed that the system was entirely automated, a dead hand left to rot in the forests of the Soviet Union. But on rare, terrifying occasions, the machine stops. The buzzing dies. The static clears. And from the speakers of radios thousands of miles away, a human voice emerges. It is the most jarring sound in the radio spectrum. It is the sound of a ghost proving it is alive. These transmissions are known as monoliths. They are not conversations. They are commands. They are strings of names and numbers spoken with a cold, military precision that chills the blood. Anna, Nikolai, Ivan. Who are these people? Or rather, what are these targets? The file on these voice messages was classified as a state secret. Yet we begin tonight by analyzing the human specter haunting the forbidden frequency. We are rewinding the tape. We are stepping back into the quiet safety of the archive. The heavy steel door is locked. The outside world is silenced. Here, we deal only in recordings. We are examining the phenomenon of the voice message. To the casual listener, UVB-76 is just a buzzer. It is a nuisance. But to the dedicated monitor, the person who leaves their receiver running for days on end, the buzzer is just the carrier. The voice is the payload. These messages are incredibly rare. Sometimes, months will pass with nothing but the buzz. The boredom is absolute. And then, often in the dead of night, the pattern breaks. Buzz, 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 silence. The silence acts as an alarm. It wakes the listener up. It tells them to hit record. Then, the voice comes on. It is usually male, but occasionally female. It sounds distant, as if the speaker is sitting in a concrete room at the end of a very long, very old telephone line. The audio quality is compressed. It lacks the warmth of a modern broadcast. It has the texture of the 1970s. The format is almost always the same. It begins with a call sign. For decades it was UVB76. Then, in the 2010s, it changed to MDZHB, Mikhail Dmitry, Genya Boris. Today it uses other identifiers like ZHUOZ, Genya Uliana Olga Zina. Then comes the code 18008, Berrumau, 74279914. The voice speaks slowly. It enunciates every syllable. This is the Russian military phonetic alphabet. Just as NATO uses Alpha Bravo Charlie, the Russians use names. Anna Boris Vasily Gregory. There is a strange intimacy in hearing these names. You are sitting in your bedroom, safe and warm, and a voice from a secret bunker is whispering Anna into your ear. It feels personal, even though it is strategic. What do the codes mean? This is the question that has occupied cryptographers for 50 years. The leading theory is that these are one-time pad messages. In a one-time pad system, the receiver has a book of random numbers. The sender broadcasts a string of numbers that correspond to a page and a line in that book. Only the person with the matching book can decode the message. To everyone else, to the CIA, to MI6, to a SIT is gibberish. It is noise, Brummel, terracotta farming. These words of strange nouns are the keys that unlock the orders. Imagine a submarine commander in the Arctic surfacing, just enough to raise an antenna. He hears the buzz. Then he hears Brummel. He opens his safe. He takes out the red binder. He turns to the page marked Brummel, and there, written in plain text, is his instruction: return to base, or change course, or something worse. The genius of this system is its simplicity. You cannot hack a book that is sitting in a safe. You cannot decrypt a message if you don't have the key. It is uncrackable by brute force. But let us focus on the voice itself, the human being behind the microphone. We often dehumanize the military. We think of them as faceless units, but the voice behind the buzz is a person. They have a throat that gets dry. They have a breath that catches. They have a distinct accent. Listeners have analyzed these voices. They have given them nicknames. The bored man, the angry woman. There is one recording from 2010 where the operator sounds exhausted. He stumbles over a number. He coughs. That cough is a breach in the armor of the superpower. It reminds us that the dead hand is maintained by living, breathing, tired people. It breaks the illusion of the perfect machine. We must imagine the room where this person sits. The live mic theory we discussed earlier puts them in a small, acoustic-tiled booth in the bunker. There is a microphone on the desk, a red light on the wall, a glass of water, a logbook. They sit there for an 8-hour shift. Most of the time, they just watch the needles on the transmitter. They listen to the buzz. It must be maddening. And then a phone rings on their desk. A secure line from Moscow. They pick it up. They listen. They write down a string of numbers. Then, they lean forward. They flip a switch that cuts the buzzer. The room goes silent. The red light turns brighter. They press the push-to-talk button. Mikhail, Dmitry, Genya, Boris. For those 30 seconds, they are the most powerful voice on the planet. They are speaking to the entire Russian military apparatus. Their voice is traveling at the speed of light, bouncing off the ionosphere, wrapping around the globe, and then, they release the button. They flip the switch back. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The routine returns. The power fades. They are just a soldier in a basement again. This juxtaposition between the mundane boredom of the shift and the strategic weight of the message is the core of the mystery. It is the banality of evil turned into a soundscape. The archive chill asks us to find peace in this. Why? Because the voice proves that there is still a human in the loop. If the system were truly fully automated, we would hear a synthesized voice, a computer reading the numbers, cold, perfect, soulless. But we hear a human. We hear intonation. We hear hesitation. As long as we hear a human voice, we know that the machines haven't taken over completely. We know that there is still a decision-maker. That is a comforting thought, in a strange, dark way. Let us look at some of the specific anomalies involving the voice. There are moments when the fourth wall breaks because the system uses a live microphone that is often left open by mistake. We sometimes hear things we are not supposed to hear. On November 11, 2010, a conversation was broadcast. 2 people were in the room. They didn't realize the mic was hot. Operator 1, I have a fever. Operator 2, you need to go to the infirmary. Operator 1, I can't leave the post. This snippet of dialogue caught by a listener in the Netherlands, is tragic and beautiful. It is not a discussion about nuclear codes. It is a discussion about feeling sick. It humanizes the ghost. It turns the scary Russian soldier into a guy with a fever who just wants to go to bed. These hot mic moments are the holy grail for archivists. They are the cracks in the concrete. Another time, a listener heard a faint sound of a woman's voice saying, "Don't forget the tea." Tea in the heart of the doomsday machine. They are making tea. It grounds the horror in reality. It reminds us that life goes on, even in the bunker. The contrast between the buzz, which represents the threat of annihilation, and the tea, which represents domestic comfort, is what makes this story so compelling. For sleep, it de-escalates the fear. It makes the monster look ordinary. Let us sit at that desk for a moment. Let us inhabit the space of the operator. The shift is long. The fluorescent lights hum. The air is recycled. You are the voice, but you are also a listener. You are trapped in a feedback loop with the machine. The archive suggests that the role of the announcer is a specialized one. Not every soldier is allowed to speak on the frequency. You need clear diction. You need a steady nerve. In the Soviet era, these operators were likely women. The numbers, ladies. There is a tradition of using female voices for number stations, because higher frequencies cut through static. Beta. UVB76 is distinctively male-dominated in recent years. It sounds aggressive. It sounds authoritative. However, there have been recent reports anomalies in the anomaly of children's voices. This is likely a hallucination of the static, or perhaps a radio bleed over from a baby monitor in a nearby village, but the listeners swear they heard it. A child singing. Imagine the eerie nature of that. A nursery rhyme broadcasting on the frequency of war. It adds a layer of folklore to the station. It becomes a campfire story for the digital age. But let's return to the codes. Bere, oheme, aele, ame, ihene, ane. The words themselves have no meaning. They are chosen because they are phonetically distinct. They are hard to confuse with other words. Bromel is a chemical. Terracotta is a clay. They are random nouns plucked from a dictionary. This randomness is a shield. If the orders were plain, English launch missiles, panic would ensue. But Bromel is opaque. It is a gray box. It could mean launch missiles, or it could mean test the microphone, or it could mean happy birthday to the general. We will never know, and that unknowing is a form of safety. The mystery allows us to sleep. If we knew the truth, we might never sleep again. So we accept the code. We accept the Bromel. There is a meditative quality to listening to the voice messages. The rhythm of the numbers. Semiarka Chetvierka DBA 7.2.2.2. Closing parenthesis. It is a chant, a mantra. The numbers repeat. They flow. They have a cadence. Some people use recordings of these number stations to help them focus, or to help them drift off. The voice is not speaking to them, so they don't have to process the information. It is just sound. It is found audio, a scrap of history caught in the wind. The voice behind the buzz is also a testament to the durability of analog communication. We are used to digital silence. Text messages make no sound. Emails make no sound. But this voice, it travels through the air. It vibrates the speaker cone. It is physical. When the operator speaks, he is pushing air molecules. Those molecules hit a diaphragm. That diaphragm creates a current. That current becomes a wave. That wave travels to the ionosphere. It is a miracle of physics that we can hear him at all. We are connected to him by an invisible wire of energy. Think about the vast distance between you and the bunker. The forests, the oceans, the cities. The voice crosses them all to reach you. But tonight, the voice is not giving orders. Tonight, the voice is quiet. The logs show that tonight, the frequency is stable. The buzz is rhythmic. There are no interruptions. The operator is leaning back in his chair. He is watching the monitors. He is sipping his tea. The microphone is cold. The push-to-talk button is unpressed. There are no codes to decipher. There are no alerts. The world is in a state of equilibrium. The dead hand is holding steady. The live voice is resting. That we can take comfort in the boredom of the operator. We want him to be bored. We want his shift to be uneventful. A boring night in the bunker means a peaceful night for the world. Let us visualize the operator's logbook. The page for today is blank. Just a timestamp and a signature. All quiet. That blank page is your permission to rest. There is nothing you need to decode tonight. There is no hidden message in your dreams. You can let the static wash away the complexity of the day. The voice has stopped speaking. The buzz has softened into a hum. The connection is fading. The signal is dropping. You are drifting out of range. The archive is locking the door. The tape is finished. The reel spins freely. Click, click, click. The silence returns. But it is a warm silence. A human silence. The operator has turned off the lights. You are safe. Good night. We often treat the dead hand as a relic. We speak of it in the past tense, as a ghost story from the Soviet Union, a rusted machine buried in a forgotten swamp. But the archive does not deal in nostalgia. It deals in data. And the data from this year, 2025, tells a very different story. The ghost has not faded away. It has woken up. Beginning in January of this year, monitoring stations across the northern hemisphere began to detect a terrifying anomaly. The signal strength of UVB76 did not just stabilize. It surged. It tripled in power. The erratic analog buzz was replaced by a hard, digital pulse that cut through the atmospheric noise like a razor. Codebreakers call them the activation spikes. These are not the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. They are the adrenaline spikes of a system preparing for war. The file on these recent events is still encrypted, yet we begin tonight by analyzing the moment the Doomsday machine came back online. Let the alarm bells fade. We are safe within the walls of the archive. The doors are sealed. The monitors are dimmed. We are here to observe, not to panic. We are pulling the file labeled Current Year, 2025. It is the freshest file in our collection. The paper is crisp. The ink is still drying. To understand the activation spikes, we must first understand the context of our current moment. For the last decade, the frequency of 4,625 kHz had fallen into a pattern of decay. The signal was weak. It was often drowned out by static or interference from Chinese merchant shipping radios. It felt like the Russian military had lost interest. The buzzer was becoming a background character in the drama of the spectrum. But patterns in the archive are cyclical. What sleeps must eventually wake. On January 14, 2025, at exactly 3 o'clock Coordinated Universal Time, the noise floor on the 4,625 kHz band dropped. It was as if a giant hand had swept the table clear. All the background static, all the interference, vanished. Then the spike hit. It appeared on the waterfalls, the visual displays used by radio operators, as a solid wall of bright red. It was not a buzz, it was a roar. The signal strength meter on receivers in Finland, which usually hovered around S7 or S8, pinned the needle at S930 decibels. This is an immense amount of energy. It indicates that the transmitters were running at maximum capacity, or perhaps that new transmitters had been brought online. The archive calls this the power-up. It suggests that somewhere in the vast, snowy expanse of the Western Military District, a switch was thrown. The standby generators were bypassed. The main grid was tapped. The system was given priority. Why? We must look at the spectral signature of the new buzz. In the old days, the Povarovo days, the buzz was dirty. It had harmonics. It wobbled. It sounded like a mechanical device buzzing in a room. The 2025 buzz is different. It is surgically clean. It has sharp edges. When analyzed on an oscilloscope, it looks like a perfect square wave. This tells us something profound. The dead hand has been digitized. The live mic theory is being challenged. While we still hear occasional background noise, the primary signal seems to be generated by a high-fidelity synthesizer. The Ghost has upgraded its voice box. This modernization creates a feeling of technological dread. An old, rusty robot is scary because it is unpredictable. A brand new, sleek AI robot is scary because it is efficient. The spikes of 2025 are efficient. Throughout the spring, the activity intensified. The voice messages, the monoliths, became frequent. In previous years, we might hear a voice once a month. In March 2025, we heard voices almost every day. Mikhail, Dmitry, Genya, Boris. The codes were longer, more complex. Instead of single words, they were sending strings of data. 8492-1144 ante-RN y área 881922. 1. The community of listeners was electrified. The forums were buzzing faster than the station itself. What does mean, they asked. It likely means training or exercise, but the frequency of the messages suggests a system stress test. It suggests that the operators were running a marathon drill. They were ensuring that every link in the chain from the bunker to the submarine to the missile silo was responding instantly. We must imagine the scene inside the modern bunker. Gone are the peeling green walls of 1980. The 2025 command center is likely a glass cockpit, large LCD screens, touch interfaces, soft blue ambient lighting. The operators are not struggling with rotary phones. They are wearing noise-canceling headsets. They are typing on silent keyboards. But the purpose remains the primal one: destruction. The juxtaposition of modern aesthetics and ancient fear is the core of this file. We have taken the apocalypse and given it a user-friendly interface. Let's discuss the pirate wars of 2025. It is a subplot that adds a layer of chaos to the narrative. The signal grew stronger. It attracted attention. Digital vandals, hackers, and radio pirates from across Europe and South America decided to challenge the buzzer. They built their own high-power transmitters. They aimed their antennas at the ionosphere, and they tried to jam the dead hand. For a few weeks in April, the frequency became a battlefield. You would tune in and hear the buzzer fighting against music, memes, and synthesized speech. It was a cacophony, a digital mosh pit. But then, the Empire struck back. On April 15th, the buzzer deployed a new weapon, the wideband wash. Instead of just buzzing on 4,625 kHz, the signal suddenly expanded. It broadened its shoulders. It washed out 4,622, 4,630. It drowned the pirates in a tsunami of white noise. It was a show of force. It was the system saying, "You are playing with toys. I am a weapon." The pirates were silenced. The frequency cleared. The buzz resumed its solitary march. This incident reveals the autonomous capabilities of the modern system. It can defend itself. It can sense interference and adapt. It is adaptive warfare. The archive chill invites us to look at this not with fear, but with awe. We are witnessing a machine that is alive in its own way. It has an immune system. When a virus, the pirates, attacks, it raises a fever the signal power to kill it. Let us focus on the texture of the spike. When the signal spikes, the audio quality changes. It becomes crunchy. The air around the transmitter becomes ionized. If you were standing near the antenna in St. Petersburg during a spike, you might smell ozone. You might feel the hair on your arms stand up. The air is heavy with potential energy. There's a specific sound that precedes a voice message. In 2025 it is a double click 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 dash click dot. It sounds like a gun being cocked. Listeners have learned to fear that sound. When they hear the click click, they stop breathing. They wait for the voice. But tonight, as we scan the logs, we see that the spikes have settled down after the frenetic activity of the spring and summer. The autumn of 2025 has brought a strange calm. The signal is strong, yes, but it is steady. The drills are over. The tests are complete. The system is now in a state of high readiness. This is a state of tension, but also a state of stability. A system that is ready does not need to panic. It just needs to wait. We can imagine the servers humming quietly, processing the data from the last 6 months. They are learning. The 2025 activation spikes were a reminder. They were a flare sent up into the night sky. They reminded the world that the Cold War never really ended. It just went into sleep mode. And now, it has woken up to check the time. We are drifting north now. We are following the signal lines to the edge of the world. The activation spikes of 2025 were not limited to the central transmitter. They rippled out to the periphery, to the listening posts in the Arctic, to the submarines patrolling under the ice caps. The archive asks us to visualize the network of silence. Modern warfare is often invisible. It happens in the cloud. It happens in the server farms. But the dead hand is physical. It relies on the ionosphere. It relies on the weather. The solar maximum of 2025 played a role. In this story, the sun goes through cycles. Every 11 years, it becomes more active. It spits out solar flares. It disturbs the magnetic field of the Earth. 2025 is a peak year for solar activity. This creates a natural interference. The ionosphere becomes turbulent. Radio waves get scattered. So, the spikes in power might not just be political. They might be environmental. The Russian military had to turn up the volume, simply to be heard over the roaring of the sun. This is a comforting thought. It suggests that the aggression of the signal is just a reaction to nature. It is not a threat to us. It is a shout against the solar wind. It frames the machine as fragile. It is struggling to maintain its connection in a noisy solar system. Let's go deeper into the pattern of life analysis. Intelligence agencies use this term to describe the normal rhythm of a target. A person wakes up at 7, goes to work at 8, comes home at 6. That is their pattern of life. The buzzer has a pattern too in 2025. That pattern shifted. The maintenance windows changed. Usually, the station would go down for maintenance on Tuesdays. In 2025, the maintenance became random, or seemingly random. This unpredictability is a strategy. Random walk. If you are predictable, you are vulnerable. If you move randomly, you are hard to hit. But for the sleep listener, randomness can be hypnotic. It is like watching a fire. The flames never repeat the same shape twice. The signal never repeats the same pattern. We can drift along with it, not trying to predict it, just observing it. The archive holds a recording from late October 2025. It is a recording of a ghost broadcast. During a lull in the buzz, a faint melody was heard. It wasn't the pirates. It wasn't the operators. It sounded like old classical music, Tchaikovsky, or perhaps a folk song. It was likely a skip, a radio phenomenon where a distant AM radio station bounces off the atmosphere and lands on the wrong frequency. But for a brief moment, the terrifying dead hand was playing music. It was a moment of accidental beauty, a glitch in the matrix of fear. It reminds us that the radio spectrum is a shared space. The Doomsday signal shares the air with music, with taxi dispatchers, with baby monitors, with the stars themselves. They are all just waves in the ocean. Let us reflect on the digital waterfalls. Modern radio enthusiasts don't just listen, they watch. They use software-defined radios, SDRs connected to computers. The screen shows a waterfall of color. The 2025 spikes created beautiful waterfalls. Deep reds, bright yellows, sharp geometric lines against a background of deep blue silence. If you mute the sound, the dead hand looks like abstract art. It looks like a painting by Mondrian or Rothko. There is a chill in this abstraction. We can separate the meaning from the image. We can admire the symmetry of the signal without fearing the content of the message. We are turning the weapon into a wallpaper. This is the ultimate victory of the observer. We take the thing meant to scare us, and we turn it into something to study, something to sleep to. The activation is just energy. Energy is neutral. As we move through the timeline of 2025, we notice another trend, the echo. Because of the increased power, The signal is echoing around the world more than ever. It travels around the globe and hits the receiver again milliseconds later. This creates a slapback delay. Effect.buzz-uzz ... buzz-uzz ... It sounds like the station is in a massive cathedral. It sounds spacious. This spatial quality adds to the dreamlike atmosphere. We are not in a small room anymore. We are in a global echo chamber. The signal is wrapping the planet in a blanket of sound. We must also consider the human element of 2025. The new generation of operators, the young men and women manning the consoles now, were born long after the Cold War. To them, the dead hand is not a relic. It is just a job. It is just software. They probably play video games on their breaks. They probably text their friends. The mystique is gone for them. It is just ... routine ... And if it is routine for them, it can be routine for us. The activation spikes, despite their dramatic name, are just maintenance. They are just the system clearing its throat. Imagine a lighthouse keeper polishing the lens. He turns the light up bright for a moment to check the bulb. It shines blindingly across the ocean. But it is not a warning of a storm. It is just a check. The lighthouse is still standing. The keeper is still awake. We are the ships passing in the night, seeing the flash, and knowing we are not alone. We have analyzed the spikes. We have traced the wires. We have looked into the digital eyes of the machine of 2025. And what have we found? We have found that the machine is functioning within normal parameters. The spikes have flattened out. The red lines on the graph have turned green. The fever has broken. The archive is updating the file status. Status nominal. Threat level stable. Activity low. The year 2025 has been a noisy year for the spectrum. But noise does not always equal danger. Sometimes, noise is just proof of life. The system is awake so that you don't have to be. Think of the dead hand as the ultimate night watchman. It is pacing the perimeter. It is checking the locks. It is shining its flashlight into the dark corners of the forest. The spikes were just the watchman testing his flashlight. Now the light is dimmed. The watchman is sitting back in his chair. The perimeter is secure. You can let go of your own vigilance. We often carry our own activation spikes throughout the day. Stress, anxiety, the sudden alarms of daily life. But now, we are powering down. We are lowering the voltage. Visualize your own mind. As a spectrum analyzer, all day it has been red and yellow, spiking with thoughts. Now watch the colors cool down. The reds turn to blue, the jagged lines smooth out into gentle waves. The waterfall is slowing down. The digital silence is taking over. The encrypted messages of the data emails, the texts, the news are being filed away. You don't need to decode them tonight. The monolith is silent. No names, no numbers, just space. The archive chill surrounds you. The walls of history protect you. The signals of 2025 will continue to bounce off the ionosphere, traveling endlessly around the world, but they will pass right through you, leaving no trace. You are transparent to the noise. Let the rhythm of the imaginary buzz, that soft, distant, rhythmic pulse, guide you into the dark. It is a lullaby of endurance. It says, I am still here. The world is still here. The spike is over. The line is flat. The server lights are blinking slowly, like sleeping eyes. The file is saved. The connection is closed. You are safe. Good night. There is a file in the archives of the Cold War that has no expiration date. It is the final page of the manual. It describes a sequence of events that has never happened, but for which the machinery has been waiting for 50 years. This is the protocol of last resort. We assume that nuclear war is a chaotic, fiery event, but the truth hidden in the classified blueprints suggests something far colder. The end of the world is not designed to be a riot. It is designed to be a procedure, a checklist, a series of logic gates executing in the dark. The Doomsday Protocol is the final argument of the machine. It is the moment when the dead hand system stops listening and starts speaking. It is the transition from the threat of silence to the enforcement of silence. The engineers who wrote this code are long dead, but the code remains, looping in the dark, waiting for the specific set of variables that will allow it to execute the final command. The file was stamped never open, yet we begin tonight by reading the instructions for the end of history. We have reached the end of the file. The box is almost empty. We have examined the frequency, the bunkers, the voice, and the spikes. Now, we are left with the ultimate question. What happens if the warning is real? We are standing in the hypothetical aftermath. The transition has occurred. The atmosphere in the archive is heavy tonight. The servers are humming a low, mournful note. The air is cold, conditioned to preserve the fragile reality of the past. Let us walk through the Doomsday Protocol step by step, not as a nightmare but as a technical process. By understanding the mechanics, we remove the fear. We turn the monster into a machine. The protocol begins with the confirmation phase. As we discussed, the system detects silence, but silence alone is not enough. The machine initiates a deep query. It bypasses the standard communication lines and attempts to ping the command link via hardened, underground cables. This is the machine knocking on the door of the Kremlin. Knock knock. If there is no answer, the protocol moves to step 2, the wake up. This is a physical event. Deep in the silos, the hibernation systems disengage. The gyroscopes inside the missiles spin up. They need time to stabilize. It sounds like 1,000 dentist drills whining in the dark. The liquid fuel pumps prime the engines. The pressure builds. It is fascinating to think of the precision involved here. These machines have sat motionless for decades, yet the protocol assumes they will work perfectly. It is a gamble on engineering. Step 3 is the target selection. This is the most classified part of the system. Where do the missiles go? In the 1980s, the targets were cities. New York, London, Paris. But the archive suggests that the modern protocol might be different. It might be a counterforce strategy, targeting the enemy's silos, not their populations. Or, perhaps, the targets are obsolete. Perhaps the machine is still aiming at bases that closed 20 years ago. There is a dark irony in that. A doomsday machine fighting a war against a ghost map. The computer does not know that the world has changed. It only knows coordinates, latitude and longitude. It is blind to the reality of the surface. Step 4 is the unlock. This is where the command rockets we spoke of launch. They fly over the continent, broadcasting the codes. Click, click, click. The codes enter the receivers of the silos. The cryptographic locks disengage. The final safety is removed. The protocol is now in terminal count. There is no human intervention possible at this stage. The timeline is locked. The physics are set in motion. But here, in the safety of the archive, we can pause the tape. We can freeze the countdown. We can look at the protocol and see it for what it is, a deterrent. The existence of the protocol is the reason it has never been used. Because both sides know it exists, neither side dares to trigger it. The machine's willingness to destroy the world is exactly what saves it. This is the paradox of safety. We are safe because we are in danger. Let's focus on the sensory details of the protocol's final moments. The launch, we imagine fire. We imagine noise, but for the machine it is just data. Status, launch, variable, true, execute. It is a quiet calculation, a change of state from 0 to 1. The sheer banality of it is what chills us. It is not a dramatic speech by a villain. It is a line of code executing a function. But the protocol has a final step, a step that is often overlooked. Step 5, the silence. After the launch, after the event, the machine goes back to sleep. Its purpose is fulfilled. The batteries run dry. The generators stop. The dead hand returns to the void. And this is where we find our resolution tonight. The ultimate state of the universe is silence. The noise of human history, the noise of conflict, the noise of the buzzer is all temporary. The final warning is actually a promise of peace. It is the promise that eventually, the struggle will end. The file we have been reading is scary, yes, but it is also a story about a sentinel, a watcher who stood guard so that we could live our lives. The machine took the burden of the apocalypse onto its own shoulders. It sits in the dark, holding the weight of the end, so that you can walk in the light. You do not need to worry about the end of the world tonight. The protocol is handling it. The algorithm is monitoring the variables. The check is complete. The result is negative. Condition, peace, status, active. You can release your own protocols now. We all have them. The doomsday protocols of our minds, the anxiety about the future, the regrets about the past, the defensive walls we build around our hearts tonight. You can deactivate them. You can issue the stand-down order to your body. Tell your muscles to unlock. Tell your jaw to relax. Tell your mind to stop scanning for threats. The radar is clear. The sky is empty. We are closing the heavy steel cover of the file. Final warning. We are turning the wheel to lock it. Clank, spin. Locked out. The archive is shutting down for the night. The lights in the long corridors are flickering out. One by one. Click, click, click. Darkness falls over the rows of cabinets. The secrets are sleeping. The ghost station of UVB-76 continues to buzz. Far away in the distance, a rhythmic heartbeat in the static. But it is just a sound. A lullaby for the age of anxiety. It beats so you don't have to. Let the signal fade. Let the frequency drift. You are entering the zone of absolute safety. The 0 point of rest. The protocol is finalized. The warning is lifted. The mission is accomplished. You are safe. Good night.